What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Raven, and of course, Joe, you are back with us. Wolfkin of Old Volusia. Very nice, very nice. And Damnedest Bastard should be with us very shortly. I think that's him. Yes, here we go. DB, what's going on, man? Oh, dude, your mic is muted. That's what's going on. And someone's mic is grounding, like, really hard.
Let me check to see it's me.
Yeah, there you go. Now you're good.
Okay, so it's me.
Yeah, it's you. It's definitely you.
All right. Any idea how I fix that?
Ooh, I don't know. You gotta actually. Do you have any like CFL bulbs around? Because I can also cause it.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, there we go. Now you're good.
I just had to fiddle with the connection to make sure it was flush.
Yeah.
Yay.
So, good morning, everyone.
Hey, Ryan.
Giant Slayer Games. Again, thank you so much for the bugbears. They are amazing. Ben, good morning.
I do have a thing when we get started, but I just want to mention something unrelated first because it's great. Because it was an hour ago, and it's why I'm bouncy. I heard back from Elflair.
No kidding.
Yep. I got in contact with Jason. I said, hey, man, look, here's my number. Here's my order number. Here's the post office number. They said they couldn't find it. What do? And they said, oh, that's weird. Let me look into that. We don't like hearing about that sort of stuff. And they said, according to their information, the post office never received the scam. They never even knew the package existed.
Oh.
So they are sending me a new package, quote, with a little something extra to make up for the problem.
Oh, I can't wait. And speaking of which, I'm actually doing another live stream tomorrow, same time. And this time Jason's going to be on it. This was like kind of an emergency, kind of throw it together kind of thing, because he's launching the Wasted Lands Kickstarter. So I was like, do I do it pre-recorded? Do I do it live? Might as well just go ahead and do it live. Fuck it, we'll do it live. And so that's going to be happening tomorrow morning, same time. And if you want to come aboard, that's cool too, because this one, according to Jason, has some pretty, as he put it, difficult to reach, like kickstarting goals, because it is going to be the same size as Night Shift. And if you haven't seen what Night Shift looks like, it is not a big book. It is just kind of it's differently, like, it has some different dimensions. So it is almost digest size, just not in width, but it's going to be about this size, and it's going to use the same system that's in here. And there's going to be a Kickstarter stretch goal to have a conversion guide, to where if you purchased this or Wasted Lands, I imagine you could probably use the same conversion guide and convert it over to Troll Lord's Siege Engine, which I was like, ooh, that's really cool. So I'm looking forward to that, and it's because this is going to be a great take on fantasy that I think is very unique, and I think it's a breath of fresh air. It's definitely needed. We all need a breath of fresh air in fantasy. I mean, it could be the same old, but man, just like, I've got a lot of rule sets that are pretty much the same. You got OSE, which is the same as Basic Fantasy, which is the same as Lamentations. They just have different. They have places. DB, what's going on?
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. Finally figured out Streamlabs. You can tell this is the first time I've ever been on stream, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You're doing just fine. I can hear myself though.
Yeah, just one moment. I'll have to mute that and check that out. One second.
Yeah, but another couple pieces of news that I wanted to bring up. This one, I'll be honest with you, we've lost I think, did we talk about Tina Turner last time? Because I can't rightly remember. It's been a couple weeks ago, but I do know that the last time I went for one of my, long haul walks, I was listening to one of her songs just on repeat because it was really good. And it's one of my favorites. I haven't heard it in years. But
I mentioned it because Ghost had just put out a cover of We Don't Need Another Hero.
Yeah. And I mean, not only did we lose her, but now we've lost superstar Billy Graham. I was just kind of like, well, I'll be honest with you, superstar Billy Graham, his health has not been that good. And I mean, but when we've seen him on camera, he's actually looked okay, despite, the years of, wear, tear, and abuse on his body there. And then right after him, we lost the Iron Sheik. And that one, oh gosh, that one killed me. But the last time I saw him being interviewed, he looked super old. And I was like, whoa, dude, are you okay? And good morning, Matt. Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. But yeah, when I saw the Iron Sheik had died, I was like, oh, fuck. Because I could be having the absolute worst day. And one of his go fuck yourself tweets or this guy's a dumb son of a bitch would just instantly brighten my day. And I would retweet it all, just as much as possible. There were like the occasional tweet that I didn't really get behind, but that, like those, go fuck yourself and this guy's a dumb son of a bitch. Just, I would have given money to have him say the people at Wizards of the Coast are dumb sons of bitches, or he was going to suplex Wizards of the Coast or something like that. I would have absolutely loved that. But
one of the things that the soft, civilized people of today do not understand is just yesterday on my other podcast we were talking about Burroughs, and I mentioned how kind of subtly racist and kind of almost quaint in its ignorance that Burroughs is in the Barsoom Tales, right? You have to have brass balls. You have to have a core of chutzpah unspeakable to go into a ring in front of thousands of people dressed as a cartoonish Arab caricature and not just say death to America, but then go on Twitter and be like, and this person sucks ass. That's amazing.
Well, I said this on Twitter, and I think I do a decent impression of the guy. So in the Iron Sheik's honor, I wanted to say, you son of a bitch, you stupid jabroni motherfucker. I take you, I suplex you, I put you in camel clutch, I break your back, I fuck your ass, and make you humble. Have a good day. Go fuck yourself. So there. And I'm pretty sure we're past YouTube's little watershed moment, so I'm not gonna get demonetized. Like I'm monetized anyway, right? But
which means now I am pleased to say, now we get to talk about the time between the oceans drinking Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius, when an age undreamed of. It is unto this, the damnedest bastard you ever met. It is only Wolfgar, his chronicler, who can tell you the tale of his saga. Let us tell you the tales of high adventure.
Boy, if only I had the Conan. I should have.
I know, right?
I should. That was a missed opportunity. I should have kicked off the show with a snippet of that. But copyright strikes being what they are.
Although I'm gonna cut to the quick, and I'm going to say, we are of course aware that Arnold is not a Howard correct Conan, but it's still a great movie.
It's still a great movie. Still a great movie. There were pieces and I know one of them for certain. There were the Tree of Woe scene was kind of adapted from one of the Howard stories, but
which shall be born.
Not accurate at all. That much I could tell. But DB, what is going on, man? I know you've composed an entire thread on Howard's Conan, and I wanted to say thank you. I want to start out by saying thank you because that was the impetus for me going, you know what? Here's a whole bunch of Conan stories. It's the Howard stuff. It's on Audible, and I don't have time to actually sit down and read because I'm reading so much other stuff and researching so much other stuff that I picked it up, and it was the best credit I ever spent. So thank you so much. Let's talk Howard's Conan. I know we kind of ended it last time with which of the movies was like most faithful. I personally I don't think, because I didn't see anything recognizable from Howard's work, save for maybe Conan the character in the Conan the Destroyer movie, but it does make a good D&D movie. That much I'll say. It makes a really good early D&D movie. Sword and sorcery. This is what we talk about when we refer to low fantasy, which is magic is rare, and those who practice it usually aren't trusted.
I mean, here we go with contentious opinions, because I'm like, Barbarian is DeCamp's Conan, right? It's still got a strong flavor of Howard, but I don't think it's really Howard. And then Destroyer is Marvel's Conan, in my opinion, especially because of the number of Marvel writers helping make it. And then the I want to say, what was it, 2011 Momoa Conan? That's Hollywood's Conan. That is a creature, though visually nice, not anything like actual Conan. And you have the same problem with Call of the Conqueror. That is, as whether we like Kevin Sorbo or not, that is not Call in any strip. That's a fantasy comedy.
I heard it described the other day on Twitter as Conan the Barbarian is Cull, and Cull, the Cull movie, is the Hour of the Dragon.
I mean, it wants to be Hour of the Dragon, but
yeah, where the king has to go on a giant quest and meet up with his ex-pirate allies in order to save his kingdom and come back and, well, not restore the heart to his kingdom, but you get the basic picture from the premise of the movie.
Well, I mean, Cole being a more esoteric Howard character, even though he really shouldn't be, that's more of an Amra movie if we're going to be charitable.
Absolutely.
Which is, Cole is a pirate. It's not even really a Call of Atlantis movie, because they didn't, like, if they did it now and if they gave it the Dune treatment to just show the sheer grandeur, size, and complexity of Atlantis, then maybe. But you need a more dramatic actor to be Cole. You can't get by with Captain Dylan Hunt.
Absolutely, Cole is as a character is a very philosophical, not quite navel-gazing, but very cerebral character, as opposed to Conan, who's extremely intelligent but doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about time and the future and anything like that.
Well, if we want to be silly here, it's the D&D differential. In an ideal D&D world, you'd be Cole, because you would sit and think about the significance of what you're doing as a D&D character. But in fact, the average game is I want to murder just enough things to get titties and ale and enjoy my pleasures back at the anvil, because everything else is too complicated.
Well, and that's a lot more of what Conan's sort of credo is about. I mean, he wants red meat, he wants hot-lipped women, and he wants to kill some people, and then he's content.
Right. Like a predator animal, almost.
Yeah, he's a very simple character from as far as motivations go. Like Howard had that one quote, for instance, that said, "Men are but men, but the simplest of men are those who soonest learn the greatest of men are those who soonest learn the simplest of things." He's not meant to be Nietzsche. He's not meant to be a super complex character. And as Howard said in Beyond Black River, Conan had spent years in civilization, but it had never changed his fundamental character. He was still the same man that he was when he left Samaria at 15.
Well, it's why I love Tower of the Elephant is my favorite Conan story specifically. I know there are others. I know there are lots of people that advocate for different ones, but in Tower of the Elephant specifically, not only does Conan literally take off the trappings of civilization to go on an adventure in the middle of the city, because that's how ephemeral civilization is to him, is you can literally take it off, put it back on. But you find that it's not the morality of like the Lancer books, where the pastiche, where he's a inexplicably noble modern man in a savage age, but it's the nobility and the morality of, he is repulsed not by monstrousness, because the elephant itself is a shocking creature, but imprisonment, being broken, the lack of agency and will, the idea that the things that happen to this creature could happen to anyone, they could happen to me, and that's unthinkable.
Absolutely. And not just they could happen to me, but just not very long prior to that story, as we find out in the Miller letter that Howard wrote about, well, only months before he ended his own life, he spent a very short amount of time as a captive in Hyperborea. So he had, either through his own experiences or what he'd seen happen to the other men who were captured at that time, he'd seen torture. He'd seen, he'd been, not, well, I guess you could say a slave, but he'd been a captive. And just a short time later, he sees this twisted, broken, tortured creature that, even though it's an alien, he finds that he has a connection with.
Right. And like Ben Nix says here, it's why he complained so much when he became king. Yeah, because Conan got the crown and then discovered that the prize he'd been seeking for decades was just a shiny feather. It was a different chain.
Yeah, and one of the things that he pointed out, and this was the one piece of I think Queen of the Black Coast, when he's talking with Billet, the pirate queen, and of course his lover, and he had more to do with her than he ever did with Valeria or Red Sonja or anyone else. But he told her about Crom, and how kind of indifferent he was to the people to the Sumerians, and he's like, best not to call his attention to you because he could bring you more misery than not. But she asked him about what he believed about the afterlife. He said, I seek not beyond death. It may be the blackness averred by Numidian skeptics, or Crom's realm of ice and cloud, or the snowy plains and vaulted halls of Nordheimer's Valhalla. I know not, nor do I care. Let me live deep while I live. Let me know the rich juices of red meat and stinging wine on my palate, the hot embrace of white arms, the mad exultation of battle when blue blades flame in crimson, and I am content. And that is everything he was about. I found those words just encapsulated him, and I'm like, that is such a simple concept. It's still three-dimensional. There is plenty of room for character development even within that. Why on earth does Hollywood keep dropping the ball on this? It's like someone's overthinking Conan. When you take that and you put it against the movies, you just start to see the glaring flaws.
Well, that's that key example, because I think small scenes tell you more about a character than large scenes sometimes. Is a perfect example. They took that conversation between Beatlet and Conan, where she's asking about him, trying to learn him, not only to better master him, because though she's his lover, she's also the queen of the ship, and getting with Conan is a ploy to maintain that control.
And he defers to her quite a bit.
Right. But also, as you say, it's a well-rounded, complex interpretation of tribal beliefs, frankly, right? They gave that conversation to Subutai in Barbarian right at the beginning, where Conan and Subutai are talking about comparative religion on the steppe, right? And while Arnold does his bit and does it well, the characterization is not bad, they make Conan out to be kind of numb, because he's just like, your sky gods suck. Crom laughs at you on your mountain. It's like, bro, Conan probably would not disrespect someone else about their gods, not because of any atavistic fear that the gods will get mad, but just because he wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many things.
I was going to say, I think you even brought that up, was and this sums it up too. Conan's a refined human instinct, precisely why everybody can relate and generally digs it. That's true. I also, Giant Slayer Games, yes, great quote. And Ben says they lifted Valeria's lines and return right from Queen of the Black Coast. Yeah, I saw it. I saw what they did there. I was like, oh, terrible.
That is perhaps the worst affront to Howard that they could have possibly. I think that appears maybe in the whole movie. It's right up there with the top 3 worst things that Milius decided to do.
Yeah.
Going back to your original introduction to the discussion about the 3 movies, you guys summed it up very well. Milius wrote DeCamp's Conan, and Destroyer was a great D&D movie. It was basically Marvel's Conan. I really like certain aesthetics about the 2011 film. I think that if you've ever read the novelization by Mike Stackpole, he nails it in the first 100 pages. If you just throw out the whole world-saving storyline and the fact that they're still treating Conan like Batman, where you have to kill his parents to make sure he's a good character.
Yeah.
Other than that, every single part of those first 100 pages, where they actually go from him being not actually being born like they do in the film, where, anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked, but they actually go all the way through his training and his youth and what happens to him after his dad dies, and all the way up through to Venarium in the book. About his experiences there with his grandfather and some other what they call outlanders. It's far more Conan. It's far more Howard's Conan than the film ever was. So while the film looks pretty, it's not really Conan.
My thing is that you can, as Conan fans, you can cherry pick scenes that are excellent scenes from these 4 films, right? And the majority of the best scenes, the most Howard flavored scenes, come from Barbarian. Now we could argue back and forth to blue in the face of whether or not that's because DeCamp was basically trying to steal Howard's legacy, which is my personal opinion. I'm very frowny in DeCamp's general direction. But when we talk about Destroyer, you basically have, in my opinion, that last battle against the manifestation of Dagoth, right? And the Chamber of Mirrors. And the Chamber of Mirrors fight is amazing. Holy crap, right? I cannot actually call to memory any one particular scene of great interest that stuck with me about the Momoa Conan. Nothing really sticks.
I do have something that sticks. The sort of toward the beginning of the movie, when he's in that big chase, he's actually trying to hunt down this one guy, and of course there's that woman in the carriage, and the whole thing goes to shit. So now it's her, him, and that guy, and he's going to. The bad part is I don't even remember what the enemy guy's name was, but
the enemy guy's name was the guy from Avatar. That was his name.
He's facing off against the guy from Avatar, and he wants revenge. He's just within sword's reach of it. His sword's already bloody, and he just wipes the flat of the blade on his face before getting ready to kill him. And I was like, okay, I kind of dig that. Is it true to Howard's Conan? No, but I still dug it. It was pretty cool.
Well, I'm gonna dig into my ancient repertoire of ancientness here. Again, contentious opinions, and say that the Momoa Conan has more in common with Deathstalker than Howard.
I can see that. Actually, the one thing that I enjoy about the film of 2011 is that's your damnedest bastard. That's Howard's damnedest bastard. When he makes the jailer eat the key to the shackles and then says, you're like, slaves, go get the key. When he launches the guy that he just finished interrogating on the catapult, like, he does shit that Conan would do. But none of it is Howard's Conan. But he's a badass.
Momoa's Conan is really, really good, and I think Jason Momoa, it's become in vogue to shit talk him, but I think he's a reasonably good actor. But the stage on which they put him, the story and the context in which he was given in that film is unfit of Conan. He's a giant walking among a tiny Lego set.
Yeah.
But, Ingvaz here just said that Conan is a reiteration of Hercules. Or reinterpretation could be, but with Hercules, or Heracles as he's more commonly known, or actually more accurately known rather, Heracles was, I don't know, he was kind of caught with his parents. I mean, he was definitely strong. He definitely went through a lot of tragedy. His wife and kids were killed, and that was by his own hand because he was driven mad.
Well,
there were things like that, but I can see the strength and the resilience in Conan. But with Conan and Heracles, I think the difference is Conan wandered by choice. Heracles not so much.
My thing is that because I always love to bring this up when people start talking about Disney's Hercules, which is a affront to me.
Anything Disney is an affront to me.
People forget what happened.
I buy crumb.
But people forget what happened after the 12 labors, right? Everyone remembers, 12 labors, Hercules, he's a hero. Oh, he went to Troy. Oh, all these things. It's like, do you guys happen to recall that he went home, got himself a new wife. His new wife cheated on him and tried to cuckold him with a centaur. He murdered the centaur, and then she, in wrath, soaked a robe in the centaur's blood, gave it to Hercules as a I make up with you gift, and the poisonous blood was so agonizing that after he killed his wife, he ripped off his own skin, okay, and died. That's how Heracles died. Conan would not have fallen for that sort of trickery.
No, not at all.
Heracles, sure, he was strong and mighty and a hero, and many templates were built after him, but frankly, Hercules was a dude bro jock and kind of numb. I'd almost, if we have to find a Grecian hero who compares, I'd almost say Theseus or Jason, frankly.
Yeah, Jason would definitely qualify. I think Jason almost qualifies for a little more cult because he's not the he's a badass in his own right, but at the same time he's also more philosophical.
Well, you could argue that it's like if you were to put Jason in Howard or Howard in Jason, it would be Colin the Argonauts, where he goes on a succession of mystical adventures and eventually returns home to reclaim the throne of Valusia and murder his wife's suitors,
Yeah.
Which is totally in Cole's character.
Well, that would be more oh crap, the name is escaping me now. Odysseus came home and murdered his wife's suitors.
Was I thinking of Odysseus and not Jason?
Yeah,
but still,
I think so. Yeah.
Still, I mean, we're in the ballpark.
Hey, Whelan, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining.
I mean,
Hey, Whelan.
Now, if we want to step away, even though I love Conan, even though I can talk about Conan all day, we can make this the Conan at Power Hour. I don't care. If we wanted to step away, I think also like Howard was a protean genius who does not get enough credit. I've been buying a series of collected short story works that are unadulterated. They include notations from Howard's papers. And one of the books I got before my mom passed was his horror stories.
So
and I had never read Howard's horror stories. More importantly,
I got to read those.
That's where a lot of the accusations of like sexism and racism come about Howard. And those people completely miss the point, because Howard never speaks well of the people in the Deep South in the horror stories he wrote. He's like, let me tell you a tale of backwoods savages. You know?
It's a and here's
Yeah,
here's
he
something
even makes fun of them. I mean, when he's in one of his last series, when he has backwoods Texan hero, he's kind of dumb, and he's really silly and stupid, and he falls in love with his school teacher, right?
Right.
Which, of course, was novel to price, but in so much and insofar as the main character was Howard, he's cast himself as someone who's kind of an idiot.
Well, the one that specifically sticks with me is I forget the name of the story, but it's about a small town where the post Civil War social dichotomy has been in the Reconstruction has been kind of turned on its ear, because the traditionally powerful white plantation class is really concerned that all these freed Afro-Americans are going to murder them because they are gathering in large numbers in the woodlands. But the thing is it's not to infer that black people are dangerous or that they were these atavistic monsters who needed a strong guiding white hand, right? The story is entirely about that in their lack of culture, after having had their culture stripped from them violently by years of centuries of slavery, right? That a charlatan with sorceress claiming has forged them into a dangerous cult, right? It's more about the mistrust between two sides of a society leading to a violent overthrow and tragedy, right? That's way deeper than even a lot of modern stories want to talk about it.
Absolutely, and that's Howard's thesis.
Yeah,
is that the civilized idiots will be afraid when their society starts to crumble of the barbarians that are going to come and overthrow their civilization.
Well, because
that's the whole idea behind Howard.
Well, because I think the implication of the story is, in fact, that the uprising former slaves are not barbarians. They want to put on the clothes. They want to make the style. They want to dance the dance and howl at the moon, but they lack the truth of a barbarian heart because they have been at least partially forcibly civilized. They've been made to assimilate against their will.
Oh, I totally agree, but the white folks who are afraid of them don't understand the difference.
And right. That brings to mind this happened earlier in the week where on Minds you occasionally get super minds. It's like super chats in here, and you get a couple tokens if you do it. And I was like, you know what, this one was good, and it was the question. This was from Minds directly. They said, what is the most important thing happening in the world that isn't being talked about enough? And to me, this wasn't talked about at all. And I put it, to me, it's the preservation of our cultures respectively. Now, that means it doesn't just mean mine, because I have like 2 or 3. It just, actually 4 if you count my Southern heritage here. But it seems that there are people who aren't fully aware or immersed in their respective cultures. Now, while that's going on, many of the stories, the folk tales, the folklore, even derivative works are being subverted in an attempt to completely eradicate the bridge connecting people with their cultures. Now, while that's nothing new, it's still distressing to me because we need to understand that each of us has a cultural heritage. And we also need to understand that connection to the past and why it's important. It's not there to divide. It's there to tell us where we came from, what mistakes we can avoid, and how we can truly organically enrich ourselves and each other. In my opinion, this is why I fight so hard to preserve tabletop RPGs and fund the ones that actually do. I don't know why I put I do there. I haven't done one yet. But not just for me, but for anyone who may be curious. It's a great way to immerse yourself in folklore and steep yourself into it that way. You know where you come from, where you are, and you can get a better sense of where you need to go from there. And of course, I posted this picture here, which is just the small little smattering of material I have in terms of folklore and what comes from my own culture. And I think, especially with tabletop RPGs, especially the ones from Troll Lord Games, where they do the Codex, Egyptium, Nordica, Classicum, so on and so forth, I think that is that's something that is being done right now, and in my opinion, done well because it's done very respectably. Stuff like Wretched Folklore also helps because it seems like to me these things, especially fantasy RPGs, are very good at preserving that culture, and I think that's what has a lot of these radicals like panicking because they could push us out of D&D. You know, they can make it so repulsive we won't even buy it, and then it's like, if you don't like it, make your own. Well,
I mean, the perfect example
publication, we can actually do that, and we have, and I think what they're in a quagmire now because when it came to movies or video games, there's really nothing you and I can do about that. I mean, we'd have to be severely funded in order to do anything really directly toward that. And we're talking to the tunes of at least tens of thousands of dollars to make anything worthwhile that people will put their eyes on. With self-publication, it's a completely different animal. It's anyone can do it. And now with the rise of so many tools out there that just put all the power in your hands and they're like, what do you want to write? It can actually be done. And this was something else I wanted to share because Jason, whom I'm interviewing tomorrow, actually made this, and I thought it was a brilliant piece of work, and I thought it was the best possible setting. It was original D&D. So you can use this supplement right here. It's only 57 pages, and it does accurately, in my opinion, reflect Howard's Conan. So, and I mean, it's using the Frazetta art. It's beautiful. I forgot even where I got this one, but I know I got it. And I imagine that's probably what they wanted to put on Eldritch Wizardry before. But yeah, here it is. And they have some books that are recommended, of course. But I thought this one did pretty well in preserving the Conan IP more so than what the direction Modifius took.
Well, the thing is that if you look at, say, the conversations about Paladin, right, and all the varied massive reinterpretations and opinions on that, and we gamers love to have our arguments, right?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that most of the problems that gamer tourists have understanding Paladin is because most of them have never read the Mort d'Artre. They wouldn't comprehend the classic romantic knightly hero and where the Paladin comes from. But then the other thing is, relative to where you started this line of conversation, is when you have a company we shall not name on a website we shall not discuss, putting out reprints of old works which you can buy, right, with a disclaimer in the front claiming this is a racist work, right, unsubstantiated, unsupported, simply the opinion given, right, you color history. And this is, without slipping onto the slippery slope fallacy, this is the small incremental step to going back and just rewriting old work and obliterating past content so that you are safe and protected from potentially dangerous works, which, we joke about, but I mean, come on, 1984 and Brave New World are on watch lists in Europe for being right-wing. How the frick does that work?
That's a case of, especially, that's a case of you're not proving anyone wrong. In fact, you're solidifying the positions stated within those books.
Whether I like Tolkien or not, and I am not a Tolkien fan. When people are like, Tolkien is fantasy, I'm like, no, Howard is fantasy. Tolkien is a wannabe. And people get really mad, right?
Well, no, they come from two different sources, and this is what I've noticed. With Tolkien, and the discussion has been this, and just some guy did a great video on the blackfacing of Aragorn. By the way, hello Raven, hello Manwar. Good to have both of you here. But the blackfacing of Aragorn does go against this adapted for modern audiences goes against what Tolkien had said. There is a letter he wrote to the Dutch when they said, we would like to change the names of certain things to make it more relatable to Dutch people. And he's like, absolutely not. I wrote this. This is what it's meant to be. This is, it's meant to be an English lit folk tale. That is what it's supposed to be. With Howard really kind of wrote what he knew, and what he knew was growing up in the days of the tail end of the Old West. So Conan is more like the lone gunslinger, and of course he's kind of superstitious because, again, there isn't much magic in that world, and the practitioners of it are pretty much using it to claim power for power's sake, not to benefit anyone. With Tolkien, there are different types of magic and magic using people, and some want to benefit all of Middle-earth, and some want it to just benefit themselves. Again, power for power's sake.
Well, the only reason I mentioned Tolkien is because politically, the same government that's saying Brave New World in 1984 are bad for you is trying to say, and Lord of the Rings is a right-wing screed. It is like, are you deranged? But I know why they don't come after Howard. They don't come after Howard because, one, they don't read him, so they don't know what's up, right? And two, they know that the Howard fans would eat them alive. We would go full Crom on them. The thing is, though, is that what they want to say, what they basically are trying to assert, is that if you advocate for reading Tolkien rather than watching Tolkien on a Peter Jackson film, that you're wrong-minded. You're the bad guy, and that's where the problem lies. That's why preservation is so important. And I think Damnedest, you probably have something to say about this. I think preserving Howard is even more important because Howard's been under assault for decades. They've been trying to pasteurize and clean him up forever, and it just doesn't work.
Yep. It's been 70 years. Yep. Ever since DeCamp decided to edit Howard, they've been trying to make him something he's not. And it actually comes back to, I have a hard out here in about 15 minutes, guys. So I'm just I'm gonna sidetrack you and go on a bit of a tangent here. I have a, yeah, it's right wing. You're a Nazi if you believe in any kind of reading the source material. And I like Tolkien. I read Tolkien right after I read Howard, when I was, in my tweens, I guess it was. But before I even discovered a Robert E. Howard book, I saw The Hobbit, Rankin Bass Hobbit, in the 70s. So I have a love for both of those. And I love the Peter Jackson films, but I hate the stuff he changed. But the films are so good. Anyway, that's not my point. If I go back to my original point, there's very few people. I have a tweet that says, there's modern progressives who grew up in cities, and they have to write these scripts about Conan, and they absolutely positively do not understand what it's like to be outside civilization because they've never been. There's very few people who understand what Conan was and how he was his whole life, and that the entire saga is he's adventuring with surrounded by people who are the decadent scumbags, and he's not. And the people think when they write Conan, they write Conan as them, when they're actually the people Conan was surrounded by. So there's very few people who can write Conan because there's very few people who actually understand the dichotomy between civilization and how it corrupts, and Conan, who wasn't corrupted by civilization and was very antagonistic towards many of society's ideas. Not all, of course, because he liked having sex and he liked to drink beer and wine. So he's not going to say that they're terrible things of society, but I'm pretty sure he didn't get a lot of wine. grown up in Samaria, and I'm pretty sure he didn't get a lot of sex. He probably did between like 13 and 15 in Samaria, but prior to that, he didn't spend a lot of time having sex when he was like 9, 10, 11, and 12 in Samaria. So
I think if somebody asked Conan, what is the best thing civilization ever made? He would be like, money, so I can steal it.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's a question. I have been pondering this one. I was like, if I could only ask one question, I know your time's limited, and I thank you so much for the time you could share with us because it was amazing. If you had to pick one RPG system, just one, which would you pick to run Conan, especially like true to Howard, and why?
If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick OD&D. The thing is, something that has you have to if you were to you can modify almost any system to be low magic, very gritty, bloody, but a lot of stripped down systems. So either a retro clone that is very slim, or OD&D, which you can sort of ignore a lot of the Tolkien-esque or Vancian magic, because in Conan there's hardly any magicians. He seems to run across one in every second story, but normal people, they're like myths that people are afraid of. Nobody knows magic users unless you're a king or a priest. So I guess I'd have to say OD&D, and I'm sure that would make Blackmore film absolutely ecstatic. Secrets of Blackmore would love that. But 2D20, like we had talked a little bit in DMs about 2D20 and whether we should buy it or not, and I think that they tried really hard to capture the flavor of Conan. It went off the rails there in 2020 at the end when they got rid of Patrice Luanette, the Conan scholar, because they wanted to do their own thing with sensitivity readers and things like that. But Mark Finn was also a advisor on that series. So I think that they started out with great intentions, and I think they did capture a lot of Howard's spirit. But to be honest, I can't honestly say that you should play that one because I've never played it. I've read a 2D20 mechanic, and it just isn't something that I've ever had time to get into because, anyone who follows me on Twitter also knows, I took like a 30-year break from role-playing games between like the early 90s and 2020. So I haven't really had a lot of time to digest anything that happened in there.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised, but I am a little, because like White Box, Swords and Wizardry, that seems to be a good system to run that kind of thing. Old School Essentials or Basic Fantasy would also work. But I'm really like the one I would probably pick, probably going to be Hyperborea. Not even going to lie.
Yeah, I haven't played that one either yet. I own it.
Yeah, same. I own it, and I've been through at least the player's guide, and I'm like, this is absolutely fascinating stuff. I would probably only modify the lore a little bit, to kind of put it as this is not a dying Earth, and we wouldn't have like we wouldn't have the technology come in. You know, that probably, if I'm running Conan using that, that probably isn't going to happen. But again, that comes with like just modifying, stuff like that. And like you said, you can modify any system. I think the only real caveat I would give to that is, set those expectations. Especially if you're playing with strangers, set those expectations upon invitation. Adventure Conquer King system, yeah, and DCC would also work, yeah, especially those critical, those crit tables. Those crit tables would normally go really well to that.
I love the corruption mechanic in DCC.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean,
that seems to be so Hyborian to me. Like, if you're one of the reasons people don't know a lot of magicians, maybe in Hyboria, is because they've all become some kind of creature that can't leave their castle.
True.
So this might have been mentioned while I was putting my ice cream back in the freezer, but of course, Miguel Sylvia, if you're watching or if you're out there, hear my shill. Wretched Bastards would be a good Conan platform if you want to
yeah.
if you want to use something OSR. But I'm gonna be the weird little edgelord here. New World of Darkness put out a book called Mirrors, which was about how to do the World of Darkness in different genre styles. And one of the styles they propose is dark fantasy. And if you ran World of Darkness as a Mortals game of dark fantasy in a time undreamed of, I think it would be good, because the monsters are dangerous and the world is evil and there are things to be afraid of in the dark, and the only thing you can vaguely trust perhaps is the steel in your hand.
Yep. I've heard lots of good things about World of Darkness, but I got out of role playing just as it was be vampire and werewolf were becoming popular, and I never played it, and I never bought it, and I don't have the first clue about it.
It's a trip. It's a trip of complexity. There's so much to say about that we don't want to get into right now.
Well, I think I had another question and I just lost it. Of course, it could be with just the me beating the shit out of my feet and calves last night. But
were you still listening to Tina Turner?
No. Actually, I was listening to Old Gods of Appalachia, the podcast.
That's a great podcast.
Yeah, it is. And I just found out, everything in this thing is gameable. How is this not a game? And then, oh yeah, Monty Cup games. And I asked them directly, is it going to have the lines, the fails, the X cards, and all that stuff? Because if it is,
did they answer you?
They never did.
I suspect it will.
They never want to admit when they're going to do that kind of cheese, because they know that would be a bar to entry for their own product. That people would, if they heard about it, they would be like, "Oh, I don't want to go with that level of complication."
And here's the thing: I've got a few books that I do like that have that stuff in it. Kids on Bikes, Monster of the Week. They immediately come to mind. But the thing is, I went into those books not knowing that was in there until I had them and I began reading them. And then it was kind of like, oh, damn it. But the thing is, it's, let's see. It says they're really cool people, but lean a little woke. And there's the problem, because here's why I won't knowingly buy any game like that.
Hey, real quick, Wolfgar, can we replace woke and just call them civilized? They lean civilized.
Absolutely, that's
because we should all be barbarians.
Yeah, but actually, the way some of them act, especially like what's his face from Delta Green lately, that was uncivilized. Like, jeez, wishing.
Okay, all right. Let me posit a nasty opinion. They're the picks, and we all know what to do with picks and an axe.
Hey, hold on. I come from a line of picks.
I understand your sentiment, but I had this discussion with Dying Breed on Twitter. It's like, I mean, I understand that you think this isn't civilized, that kind of idea isn't civilized, but it is the ultimate extension of civilization. Everyone loves to talk about civilization when it's on the rise and everything's getting better and great things are happening. But no one wants to think about what happens when your civilization starts to crumble because it's decayed so bad that nobody can possibly save it.
It's the ultimate contradiction. To be a savage is to hold civilized opinions, but know there are consequences. To be a savage, or to be civilized, is to hold barbaric opinions and think you can get away with it.
Well, here's something I want to bring up, because a couple episodes back we did a Q&A about the time I worked in a prison, and if I'm not mistaken, I pointed out that Howard's quote about civilized men being more discourteous than savages because they know they could be impolite without having their skull split as a general thing. If you ever want to see that comparison, work in a prison, I don't care where it is, work in one that has a specifically bad reputation, and then go to a place like the one I'm living in now. You know, go to like Philadelphia, for example. Go to a major city and look at what your civilization is like. In fact, what passes for a civilization in a prison, especially one where everybody has a violent record, that'll show you if you do not show respect, and if you don't earn your respect, you'll probably be killed. And then you go to a major city where people are claiming, oh, isn't our civilization great? And then they flip shit over something stupid at the register. And I'm talking, when I say stupid, I'm talking a price difference of like 50 cents. They are flipping the fuck out. And it's like, okay, I think I know where I'd probably feel a little safer. And
So-
it's not here.
Sir, why did you assault that man? I live in Detroit and I wanted to move to some better lodging, so that I thought that the prison system was for me.
The problem is a lot of the people who vote for these policies, they want, like, I'm like, I know a place where you can have a cashless society. You will get health care. You will get mental health care. You will never want for food. You will never want for clothing, and you'll never want for shelter. And I cannot get one of these people to check themselves into a prison. Can't do it. I don't get it.
Sounds like you were talking about Canada there for a minute, and I was going to go, yeah, but then we have MAID, so
That's,
if you don't like the smoke from the wildfires, but have you considered MAID?
Okay, so what we need a Conan pastiche that is a barbarian against Canada, and Justin Trudeau is an evil sorcerer. There you go.
and this is a good quote. Everyone should be proud and celebrate their own culture. The different cultures are what make the world an interesting place. It's not racist to celebrate your heritage. That's true. Even if you have more than one, that should be something you should look at, because it'll reconnect you to your very primitive origins, and then you will start to realize how many people it took to get you here, and those efforts should not be wasted. Not at all.
Or shit on. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is that
exactly
everything is colonialism. The entire system must be destroyed. Okay, what are you going to replace it with? Because you have no clue.
Well, you mentioned Old Gods of Appalachia, which is a game, but here's the thing: Appalachia, a vast geographic area, has always been the chronically most economically depressed region in the United States, right? And when we talk about, when people talk about the South, and they kind of make it this malaise of concepts, when they're more or less really just talking about like Southern Virginia in personality, right? Or maybe Louisiana, I don't know. They have this idea, this image of what they're describing, but like, no, if you go into the North and into the country, right, you can find the same sorts of people, sometimes with the same sorts of belief systems for generations, right? And it would be uncouth, it'd be inappropriate to look at a person from the Appalachia, from the backwoods, from the realm of Pumpkinhead, for people that have seen that movie, and go, your culture is racist, you should feel bad. It's like, no, my culture is poor, and I am proud that we have survived here.
And I'm going to say this, having come from the South, especially parts of Southeast Texas and Southwest Louisiana,
right?
There are parts of those areas where people are, economically depressed. However, they still get along. And I was actually talking to a friend about this. This has been years ago. And there were a couple of very prominent figures in the town in which I lived. And everyone kind of looked down on them. Like they could walk into a place and buy something and generally be left alone. But behind their back, when they weren't in there, there were always the whispered rumors. And my friend and I were talking about those two prominent figures, and he said, well, okay, consider this for a moment. He said, we get up, we'll put on clothing, and we get up at the ass crack of dawn. We go, we punch clocks, and we do all this crap, and we've got these paper trails behind us that supposedly legitimize us. He goes, and then you have these two people. They don't have to do that. So really, who's crazy right now? Because they don't have all that to worry about. They don't wring their hands over bills or mortgages or anything like that. Cool. And I kind of thought about it. I was like, yeah. So there are people that are just built differently. I mean, way differently than
it's you or me. It's the Scandinavian paradigm. if you look at a lot of popular media, Vikings were evil, Vikings were horrible, raiding savages, and then when you actually like dig into Scandinavian culture, it's not just that it was democratic, it's not just that it was reasonably egalitarian, but you're now saying that a person who has to pick up a cow, literally lift beef, and carry it up to the glen over the snow because it can't climb the mountain itself to eat grass, and then carry it back down the mountain to his home so that they can all crowd together in a hut for warmth, is a barbarian and a savage because he looked down south, saw a land that was green with people that were happy and beautiful and half naked, and said, I want me some of that.
Yeah, and I think like even during the first attempt at conversion, when they were told about the fiery realm of hell, they were like, "Hey, that's great because we're cold up here most of the time."
Right.
That's why it didn't work. It wasn't a point of contention with them. They're like, "Hey, we could stand to warm up. It's cool," and that's why it didn't quite, the fear tactic on that didn't quite work out. But the hell, I forgot what I was going to say again, but. I keep having them enter, and then I just lose them.
Well, I'd love to have the damnedest bastard say, but it is the top of the hour. I believe he said he had to go.
I got about 3 minutes before I have to cut out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, do you have any last minute thoughts you want to impose?
Oh, I've got dozens. I could have done the next 2 hours with you guys.
Okay.
The one thing that we haven't discussed is actually perhaps the most Howard accurate film that's ever been made. And you guys, can you guess which one that is?
Solomon Kane?
Absolutely. Yeah. Now there's things that aren't accurate. There's things that are not accurate.
Right.
Because it's a prequel, of course. But it's pretty close both in flavor and in his beliefs. Like it doesn't really contradict a lot of future things.
Well, again, there are many quotables and many things we can refer to that are all Conan, that are all like variations in flavor. But you can boil down Solomon Kane to one line. He has many good lines, but there is one line. Men will die for this.
Yep. The very last sentence in the very first one-page paragraph or one-page chapter of the very first Solomon Kane story. Men shall die for this.
You know everything you need to know about that character, because it's literally, I find someone dying in the wilderness, I give them the only comfort I can, because I can't save them. I can't take them to a Medicaid. I can't promise that I can ease their suffering. I can only avenge a crime that would otherwise go unnoticed. And the awesome part is if you really think about it with the time period, right? Among the hundreds of thousands of similar crimes that happen every day at that time period, right? All across Europe, men die and women are violated and children lose their innocence in war and savagery, and kings are benevolent and are benevolently disinterested in your suffering. And there is one Puritan in Devonshire who might be able to make things halfway decent for some people.
I think like my only I think the only reason I really haven't read more Solomon Kane, and I've read a couple stories. They came with the audiobook I bought, because they were I think there was a comparison of how similar Solomon Kane was to Conan, and there was even a Cull story where they were noting that similarity. But the only reason I really haven't read Solomon Kane was, number one, I haven't gotten around to it, and number two, I think I deal with enough Puritans.
Oh, Patty. Poor Patty.
Well, but that's a weird one, though, because he hangs out with an African witch doctor, and he has a magical staff that was like, he's not your typical Puritan.
Not the typical one. Definitely will give him that.
Well, I mean, they even commented in the Kane stories when he deals with more civilized regions of Europe, there's something of the occult about him. There's, he's half a pagan, even among other would-be Puritans, because he's not what people think of when they think of Solomon Kane.
I think he would kind of have to be in order to defeat the evils that he faces. You know, like he has to employ some of those means.
Well, I was last night in the podcast. We were talking about things, and we talked about some X plot that's come down the pipe in comics with Selene, the mutant vampire, who in Marveldom, in their infinite idiocy, is a thousands of year old vampire who fought Conan, right? Which is dumb, which is the height of dumb to me, right? But Solomon Kane defeated vampires not with holy water, not with Deus Ex Machina, not with wooden stakes, but just with steel and iron will. The idea that you could face, wrestle, and beat to death of a flying bat monster beneath the skull-faced moon on African plateau is amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Like the little Solomon Kane I have actually been able to get into is pretty awesome. I just haven't read any more, and I still haven't read the Brackman Moore series. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But about the Pictish hero, I that's the one I'm really interested in next. But I think before I get into that, there is this one Conan book I do want to pick up at some point. I'm gonna show it off right here.
Well, while you're doing that, I just want to say that Brack McMorn is great because a lot of those stories aren't even about Brack McMorn. They're sort of like fictive history in sort of a Lovecraftian sense, where modern people interact with ancient Pictic artifacts, because the Picts really are the winners of the Hyborian Age. They're the only people to have survived into modernity and left artifacts, at least in Howard's world.
Well, guys, I got to get out. There's lots of stuff we haven't talked about. I haven't talked with Wolf about Cormac McCart, the Viking.
Oh, yeah.
Howard's Viking character. We haven't talked about the most. I started to, but then I got sidetracked like I always do. We haven't talked about the most Howardian current authors, the people who actually might get Howard. We haven't talked about Robert Howard's being a second wave feminist 30 years before there was second wave feminism. We haven't talked, there's a ton of stuff we could talk about if you guys want to have me back at some point.
You know what? You're welcome back at any time, bro.
So
anytime.
what you're saying is that, having no further concern, the damnedest bastard is returning to the wasteland from whence he came. But this story shall also be told.
Yeah, they should all. There's always another Conan short story when he's sitting around the fire, relating his stuff and his tales in no specific order.
Yep, and then Whelan just said they need to get you back on because I would love to hear this, and I would too. I'm totally in.
That book is awesome. The most recent edition, I own it, but the original edition was not as close to Howard. It had edited tales because it was just a collection of the two previous ones. But the more recent editions, that one that's shown right there actually has some of those corrected. So it's pretty dang close.
Look, Wolfgar, I know you have some plans of your own, but I'm just going to throw this out there as a thought, just something to ponder while you wander yonder.
Mm-hmm.
We get Damnedest back. We do some Howardian Four Against Darkness.
You know what? That would be very cool because it does loan well to that. Four Against Darkness does loan well to that. And of course, I can easily do it with two people because, I mean, I did it with me GM-less and I was running 4 characters. So, yeah, I mean, you guys could run like 2 characters a piece, or we can get a couple more people and do a character a piece and I could run it. That wouldn't be a problem at all.
All right, guys, I got to get out. I could probably come back sometime in mid-July. My time is pretty limited. I was able to find some time this weekend, but I'm super busy between now and about the 15th of July.
All right, yeah.
We can arrange something, though.
Oh, and of course, real quick, anyone who is a huge fan of the Damnedest Bastard, don't forget to repost and tweet and say hello. Get on those council fires. We love to see you.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Loved having you, man. And there we go.
And we are diminished. I mean, we're great, but it's like, oh, he's gone now.
Yeah. But yeah, these these stories were among my favorites because I grew up on the sword and sorcery movies. I honestly, I think the most high fantasy it ever got for me was Willow, and I love that movie. I know there are people that are running around now. Oh, that movie was like nobody saw that, and I was like, well, I did, and I thought it was great. But that was probably the most high fantasy beside maybe the Neverending Story that I got. So I'm not exactly sure.
Here's the thing. I'm going to make a weird argument. Appreciating fantasy is a evolutionary process that dovetails with growing up, right? So when you're very young, you like certain kinds of fantasy that are very high fantasy, out there, wacky. Everything is great and everything is super fun. And as you get older, you start wanting more nuanced, interesting, different fantasy exposure.
Yeah.
Right? Because I will point out that when I was 18, okay, I finally got my hands on Hour of the Dragon, actual Howard, not a pastiche, not a Sprague de Camp, actual Howard. And I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy the Conan in Hour of the Dragon. I was like, wow, all this buildup and this kind of sucks, right? But the thing is that Hour of the Dragon is the last Conan story, right? And I never gave up on it, right? So, like, yeah. I really enjoyed Druce the Axe, who's a Conan knockoff by David Gemmell, great author. I really enjoyed Michael Moorcock's Eternal Champion, of course. You know, I went through a succession of people. I absolutely love Fritz Lieber's Elsewhere, right? Because what is Farford but a more chill Conan, right?
Honestly, I've never read Lieber. Like, I'm gonna make some confessions right now. Well, like, when I was younger, I did read my library actually had Conan the Barbarian novels, and I read those. I had no idea these were like pastiche novels, so I just read them. I enjoyed them. You know, I'm in my teens, right. And this is just after most of my friends have moved away. You know, I'm trying to kind of just keep everything low key. You know, I've got my D&D material, but there was really no way of making that solo play thing happen that I could think of yet. So I just kind of immersed myself in those. Those were as fantasy as I got. Everybody else were reading these, like, I'm talking books like as thick as adventure anthology. I think that's Blood. Is that Blood? No, that's Blood. So, I mean, we're talking like this, and they're little paperbacks, and they're bringing these hunks into school, and they're telling me about them, and I'm like, that sounds cool. But it seemed like I'm looking at that page count, and I'm like, yeah, it seems a little wordy.
That's the thing is, when I say that your fantasy flavors are evolutionary, what got me into Conan, what finally made me a believer, right, was as I was getting older, my selection of fantasy was getting tighter, not because I was choosing it, but because what was getting published was more strained. And this is before the explosion of everything is now Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna speak ill of something you like. I'm sorry. For a while there, everything was Dragonlance. Okay, and I don't just mean Dragonlance specifically. I mean like the Shannara Stones, David White's series with with a bunch of knights, Sword of Truth, right? Everything was a Dragonlance derivative, right? And increasingly, whether because of people having political spectra or being third feminists or what have you, they thought, well, we'll give our heroes the Marvel treatment. We'll make them have a bunch of drama and be sad and be whimpery. And I was like, come on, where's the heroism? Where are the people that want to be out there for being out there, right? And that's when I happened to start reading Conan again. I went, you know what? This is great if you read it in the original Howard from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because younger Conan is absolutely that guy that wants to be out there and see shit and do things because it's cool.
Yeah. And, you know, Whelan says, I grew up reading the Conan comics. I'll be honest with you. I had one issue of the Savage Sword of Conan, maybe two, but I only read one. And the moment that I remember most from it was he got into a bar fight, he uppercut one guy like super hard. I mean, like it showed his fist coming up and into the guy's like lower jaw. And I was like, there were people that were like, "Whoa, I felt that from here," and they were like, "Yeah, well, Ortho felt it from right there," And he's on the ground and he's laying there. Another guy who joined in the fight on Conan's side, of course, smacked another guy over the head with the flat of his blade and knocked him out. And then Conan, like, he didn't cut the guy's throat, but he took a swipe with his sword and cut the guy's beard in half. And he was like, basically just tell him, get the fuck out, fucking leave. And then this tavern wench is coming up. She's all over Conan. Apparently she wants to bet him. And the guy who fought on his side tossed her one thralloon. He said, "Here's a thralloon piece." And she goes, "What do I have to do for it?" He said, "Disappear." So he had business to discuss. That's really all I remember from it. Because that was, like I said, it's the only, maybe one of two, and that was the only one I read. But I really didn't read fantasy novels that much until I was an adult. Then I read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I read them out of order. My mom had rented the Rankin Bass Hobbit for us as kids, and I started to watch it, but kind of got disinterested because something else was going on. I think I might have been playing with something at the time, but I was just kind of like, okay,
This is why Peter Jackson's Hobbit is an offense. Okay, and I know lots of people are like, oh, because it's a trilogy, oh, because it's CGI. It's like, no. There is one reason that makes that entire film not The Hobbit. When you cut out Bard's soliloquy before he takes the shot, you destroy that book. That is the best hero speech.
And I'm with you on this one, Whelan. I did kind of read one or two, and I thought they were okay. And like these books right here, the Shannara books, the Dragonlance books, I wouldn't even touch them back then. I was more of a horror guy. So like John Saul, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, those were my go-to. My only problem, like I fell out of favor with John Saul because I noticed something. Everyone in his books is this wealthy suburbanite family that bad things start to happen, or these weird, like Darkness was a good one. I love that book. Creature was also great. Those were my two favorite John Saul books. But I just after a while I noticed it's the same kind of pattern. I was like, okay, I'm done with that. Dean Koontz, on the other hand, was amazing. Stephen King, back in the 90s, I started reading a lot of his work. Kind of got into Dark Tower. Wizard and Glass was where it kind of lost me because I couldn't seem to, get my head into that as much as I could the four previous books. Going back and listening to those in audiobook, I kind of got why, because the time jumps were there. But I think absolutely the Dark Tower books would make a great tabletop RPG. Just hopefully no sensitivity reader shit. But
to riff off of what Whelan's saying, I'm going to talk ill of a book. I'm sorry, Whelan. I've got Kaz the Minotaur, if it's the one I think it is. And the character's a human, right? Who is living and working among Minotaurs, right? And as a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I talk about the sort of more modern fantasy where they whinge emotional about things that they really shouldn't, that don't make a lot of sense. At a given point, the character is upset about what the warband he's running with is doing, as he should be, maybe, right? But he directly gets an intervention from the god of Minotaurs who chews him out for having a problem with it, right? When he should just follow the flow and, smith like he was told to do. And it's like, why? Why would a god come out of nowhere to speak to this person? And why, frankly, are they that special? How is that good storytelling? And then, of course, why is he whinging about the morality of what he's doing when he knew exactly what he was getting into? He's lived among Minotaurs, knows what they're like. He knows the society he's in. The moralizing is more for the author and the reader than it is for the character. And that's wildly out of place. That's, in my opinion, that's an earmark of bad modern fantasy, that we tend to have those non-story conversations in the middle of your fantasy book.
And also, so you go into this. Wheelan, back then I also read some Elric, which I recently got back into. I'll be honest with you, I didn't discover Elric until I was in my 20s, and the only reason I like Elric was just not available to me. Okay, but I started dating a girl who had the entire series. I never read the series. Then when she moved out of my house, and I pretty much kind of inherited the. It was a house we were renting. When I just kind of inherited it, she left those books there, and I held on to them, but I never did read them. When she returned, I literally just gave them back to her. I was like, "Hey, I have something I think you're gonna want." Now, by this time, we had broken up. She married another guy, had a kid by him, and they had come down back to where we live from a few states away, and ended up getting stuck. And I was like, "Hey, well, while you're here, I do have something that's yours." And I went and I retrieved that set of books and gave them back to her because she told me they were out of print. I was like, okay. Now, I actually found through Hoopla, thank goodness for that app, I found through Hoopla the comic book or the graphic novel version of it, and I read it, and I was kind of like, I know she had told me he was a hero cursed to perpetually adventure, and he was this albino with a vampiric sword named Stormbringer. I thought that was kind of cool. But then when I saw the comic book depiction of him, which I just call them comic books. I don't call them graphic novels. When I saw this comic book depiction of him, I was like, he's kind of sickly. How much of a badass could this dude be? And it turned out he was really badass. I was like, okay, I get it. Cool. But like this one, started with Lovecraft, which led me to Howard and Lieber. I didn't get into Howard and Lieber. I got into Lovecraft because there was this book, dusty old book, sitting on the library shelf. I picked it up and I started kind of thumbing through it. And the description it gave me, I was like, okay, well, let's see what this old horror stuff is like. Again, I leaned toward horror. I needed a new author. This was it. Checked it out. I get home. I was such a Metallica fan back then. I started with Call of Cthulhu. I was like, did Metallica misspell it? And then I realized it had reference, like the thing that should not be was a reference, and a few others. And when I'm reading Lovecraft, I'm like, whoa, hold up. This is some wild shit here. But it didn't, it wasn't the impetus to check out Howard or any of his contemporaries. I just really loved his work, even though he uses a little bit of archaic language, which I was okay with. It didn't really hurt me. But the Choose Your Own Adventure books, I was definitely into those. And one of them was Villains of Volturnus from TSR, which I was like, how is it D&D is evil and you let me have these books? That's crazy.
Well, here's the thing again. Actually, is you could almost say that Lovecraft is what got me back to reading Conan, because I was in community college and we were running with this group of people who were playing D&D 3, and two of them were insufferable. Okay, one of them was one of those guys who thinks he knows better than everyone else and about all things all the time and tells you about it. Right, you know the kind.
Yeah.
Right? His best friend / not girlfriend was a young woman who was pre-transition and insisted on being addressed by the male pronouns, right? But would openly comment that they were confused about whether or not they could still wear women's lingerie if they became a dude. And it's like, okay, that's your business. But the thing is, they got on the subject of Lovecraft, and first and foremost, they were one of the pairs that they advocate for Lovecraft being a mythology, this systemized recitation by August Derleth, right? But then the other thing is that they were full of what can only be described as superstitious folklore about Lovecraft the man. Oh, Lovecraft was gay. Lovecraft was trans. Lovecraft died in the same house he was born in because he was a agoraphobe and never left his home, right? And the thing is that I went and I looked up. I'm like, this can't be real. This sounds too wacky to be. Why haven't I heard about this before? And it's not. None of that shit was real, right? And I was like, well, look, if they're going to start spreading lies about Lovecraft, maybe I should get into the real business. So I went to a place called Forgotten Books. If you guys have never heard of Forgotten Books, check that place out. They do print on demand releases of as many unaltered works as they can get, and they include the works of Lovecraft, right? And I read, I read Lovecraft as is, with nobody else's interpretations on it. And it's like, okay, so all of this is episodic. It's not actually supposed to be interconnected. Oh, and Lovecraft did go to New York, and he got married and had a wife.
A Jewish wife, no less.
Yeah, and in his later life, he was like, maybe I was kind of a shit, you know, right?
That was the thing. And there are people that are like, oh, there's no evidence. There's no evidence he denounced that, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I don't really care. I don't care one way or the other. He's a product of his time. So here's my challenge to most of these people.
Well, I just want to say,
especially those in Delta Green and Chaosium and all that.
You know who you are.
And yeah, you know who you are, especially those who do the audiobook version of Lovecraft. Here's my challenge to you. I want you to make a decision. I want you to make it now. If Lovecraft was so reprehensible, so just icky or whatever, stop trying to make money off his work. Just stop. Show your moral prowess. Show how upright you are, and just say, we are staying away from this. Just do it. You know, if you're going to continue to make money, I'm going to say this: stop.
Dillard.
God damn it.
I want to give a shout out to Dillard Draws. He says Wolfkin is a product of his time, a nasty furry.
The influence of Lovecraft is massive. I just watched John Dies in the End yesterday, and the film is total. Okay, I've got to see that. I did not know that. I absolutely love his works. And here it is. My first encounter with Lovecraft was in a Walden Books. Yeah, I actually bought. There was a Selected Tales book, and this was this piece of artwork that was part of the wraparound cover for that paperback has been posted to Twitter. I think it might have been Caldwell that did that. It was like Caldwell or Easley, one of the two. And it was absolutely terrifying to look at. And I was like, this is the worst possible. If you had to give me a depiction of hell, this would probably be it. I have to have this book. And I bought it.
If you actually got a conversation with these people who are like, Lovecraft's evil, but we're going to make money off of him, they would probably argue that they're taking it back from the racists. They're rescuing it from the racists. And it's like, why would you even save racist material? Wouldn't you want to see it destroyed? Unless, of course, your position's BS.
And Ben encapsulates it nicely. It says, most people around here thought like he did back then. And I'll be honest with you, dude, I come from the South. I lived there for 30 years. I have heard racial slurs being bandied about. I've heard racial jokes being bandied about. Let me tell you something. In 30 years living down there, compared to 15 years living here, I have heard far more racist, more despicable, even just the worst tinges of racism openly spoken here than I ever did in 30 down there.
But
that's crazy to me.
But the only reason I bring this up about Lovecraft with my experiences in community college is it was the idea of, have I been presented a false bill of goods by media and other writers? Have I not gotten the whole thing because I haven't really dug into the original?
Yep.
And that's where I went. It's like I went, okay, well, I gotta dig into not just I reread Hour of the Dragon and went, okay, this is actually much better than I remember it. And then I started trying to get my hands on the original short stories. And you do. Once you actually get Conan in your hands as intended, right? It's amazing. And then it's like, okay, well, I got the Solomon Kane book. I know Solomon Kane's great. I read some great Marvel Solomon Kane comics. How good is it? And I read Solomon Kane, and I'm like, making faces and hooting like an animal. I was like a monkey in front of a monolith.
Just to kind of like reiterate here, these works do come from a different time in our history, and whatever the case may be, it's like I can understand. Like I have actually tried to read Uncle Tom's Cabin. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, I own it.
A friend
My
of mine
mom.
a friend of mine recommended it to me, and I was talking with her about it, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll check it out. So I did manage to get a copy on my Kindle. I started reading it, and I was like, I found it just. I was like, Jesus, how did she get through this?
Oh,
Because she's black and she recommended it. I'm reading it and I'm cringing
oh,
at some of the shit said in there. And I do have to remember, you know, there's no self
okay,
insert here. I'm not
here's
seeing myself here. So I'm
no, no,
looking at it, I'm like, this is some of the most reprehensible
no, no.
language I've ever seen. Holy
Here's
crap.
here's the brilliance of that book, and this is a perfect example of the problem with the modern extremists. Okay, my mom bought me Uncle Tom's Cabin because it's one of the books on my very short list of basically like not approved works. Where my brain is like, well, I've never read it, so how can I know if it's good or not? Right? Because everybody talks about how awful Uncle Tom's Cabin is, and they talk about, you know, the term gets used. You're an Uncle Tom, and I'm like, yeah, but where does it come from? What's it about? So Uncle Tom's Cabin was written by a white female abolitionist for other white people to understand what they were doing, right? You know, to try and get people to understand why are abolitionists so mad? Well, because we do this. This is what we do in our society, right? And I can't read it. I own it. I love it. I'd love to get deeper into it, but in that first couple of chapters, it is so vile
Yeah.
that
It really
I
is.
get viscerally angry, right?
Yeah.
And it's not even the negativity of the language. Okay. My
Yeah.
problem is right there at the beginning, chapter 1, paragraph 1, right? They're describing this priest, this good man in his society, right, who has nobly taken these Africans to his family breast and raised them and educated them and given them letters and learning, right?
Mhm.
But his fiscal situation is poor, right? And he lets himself be convinced by a charlatan and a schemer. Oh, we'll just sell some of your Negroes. It'll be okay, right? And
Yeah.
and you watch how a quote unquote good person who considers himself a good person reinterprets his information to make what he's doing okay when he already knows it's not.
Yeah.
Right?
And this will give, like, when we talk about the origins of the term Uncle Tom, I think this scene from the Jeffersons, it's only about 1 minute and 47, but it encapsulates it quite nicely. So check this out. We're gonna just watch this for just a second.
Wait 1 minute. Is the Jeffersons moving on up, or is that
Yeah, it's moving on up.
okay? Moving on up.
Okay, so here we go.
East side. Okay.
Leaving so soon? Well, I hate to overstay my welcome. Somehow I felt I did that the moment I walked through the door. Where's Louise? I'd like to say goodbye to her before I go.
She's out. She had to get up early this morning to go shopping.
I'll wait for her. You mind if I serve myself a cup of coffee?
You want to pause
Nobody
it for a minute so we don't
serves
get
better
hit
than
with a takedown?
Tell me something, George. You like to use the words Uncle Tom a lot.
Only when it fits.
Do you know who Uncle Tom really was?
Sure. He was that dumb nigga who used to thank Simon Legree for whipping him.
I'm going to pause for just a second here.
Yeah, well, because we're worried about takedowns, right? Mhm.
Well, no, not necessarily that. I mean, if I'm asked to take this out, I will.
Yeah.
And then I'll just direct people where to go see the full uncut version, which will be up on Rumble and Odyssey and Cloud Hub, obviously. But this was network TV, and George just blatantly used a racial slur directed at the character this man's about to talk about.
And yes, Dillard, I am properly chastened for quoting Sanford and Sons instead of the Jeffersons.
Yeah.
Given the choice, I prefer Benson.
Benson was one I watched quite a lot, actually. And let's see, I live in Toronto, took a Greyhound bus to Nashville, racial tension to the northern states was palpable. By the time we got to Kentucky, everyone was finally at ease with each other. Damn. But yeah, you gotta. That he is singing Sanford.
Oh, Dillard's gonna do nothing but make fun of me all show. It's great.
Don't let him live it down. Don't let him live it down.
We should. I'm just saying. Some of these. One day we should get Dillard on here, have him tell you about the buckler.
I should.
Which if anyone, if he does a campaign and you can get the buckler, buy the buckler products. The buckler's amazing.
And here's the thing. I watched all those shows too. I was watching the Jeffersons. We watched the Cosby Show, Benson. There was also In Living Color in the 90s, which I thought was hysterical because it actually took racist, bigoted things and made them ridiculous. And I thought that was great.
Let me tell you something.
Yeah, the Bill, Homie the Clown. I loved those characters. Handyman. I mean, that could get you canceled today. Benson Silver Spoons, the Jeffersons, the Beverly Hillbillies, Benny Hill. Yep, those were all regulars where I grew up too.
Well, I was mentioning on the other podcast, Mad TV, because we were talking about Bret Hart and Will Sasso, because we were talking about the Iron Sheik. Will Sasso had a bit called My Black Mama, right?
Yeah.
Where a black woman gets hit by lightning and becomes a white dude, and he basically is doing.
Don't make me break my foot off in your ass.
Right, he's just doing awful caricature impersonation.
I actually have a season of the Boondocks, and I love that show. That's one of my favorites. I dig that show.
I love that. I love that show.
Good too.
But you know, every so often I want to punch Huey in the face. I'm just saying.
All right, so let's continue on here. Let's get our education on. So, what he's like asking George if he knows where the term Uncle Tom comes from. Of course, it's a racial slur. It's like, dude, why? But here we go. This is what a dispassionate, logical, fact-based argument looks like, and you are about to get. I'm going to give everyone a heads up before I click play. It will result in savagery.
Wait a minute.
It will absolutely.
Wait a minute.
This is where George stepped in it. Okay.
Before you get that, Dillard says that was Artie Long, not Sasso. You clod. Not all whites look the same, Joe.
That was Artie Long. Holy crap. Okay, so let's continue with this because it's really good. Here we go. And play.
Wrong. That's another one of those lies about our people that has been accepted as truth.
Who was it then? Superfly in disguise?
No, George. In real life, Uncle Tom.
Just real quick, when he was, who is it? Superfly in the sky. You can tell he's getting frustrated. He is absolutely sick of George's shit.
How dare you attack my beliefs?
Josiah Henson.
Wait, hold
on. Who escaped a slave named Josiah Henson, who escaped and walked all the way from Kentucky to Canada with his wife and children. And there he started the first manual training school for our people.
How you know that?
I read. Sometimes I listen. You could do the same thing.
Huh?
You heard of the Underground Railroad?
Sure.
Well, Josiah Henson helped 100 slaves escape up north even before there was an Underground Railroad. He was a brave man, a great leader. And I'll tell you something else, George. I'd never call you an Uncle Tom.
Ooh. Oof. Straight up savagery. Just eviscerated
that burn was
fire.
Life.
Yeah, I was like, damn.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing though. So the Jeffersons is this the comedy is in the misunderstandings, but the Jeffersons themselves are never presented in a particularly negative light.
No.
Right? You compare that same time period to Archie Bunker, right? Where the comedy's in the confusion, but Archie is consistently presented as backward, ignorant, nasty, because Archie Bunker's kind of those things.
But there was another episode. As a matter of fact, let me find it. let's see. A maid, I think. They actually hired a maid. Okay, here it is. This one's going to be a bit of a longer clip, but they ended up hiring a maid, or Archie did, and the maid was, of course, a black woman, and he runs into her in the store. And you got to see this because this one's going to be a few minutes, so I can spare that. That's fine. This one I think is one of my favorite. I'll just kind of pause it for now. This is one of my favorite scenes because this one, like, you got to understand, George and Archie were friends. These comedies were set in the exact same universe here, so that there was crossover, and Archie loved watching. Like there was a scene where I think it was George's daughter was going to get married to a white guy, I think, and Archie was like, wait a minute, hold on, what's going on here? Oh, and he loves to stir the pot, so he goes and he gets George. He's like, by the way, have you met her fiance yet? Oh, come here. And then when George finds out, he's like, wait, what?
Well, before you hit play, Wolfgar, let's just consider the following. So my parents' generation is Archie and George.
Yeah.
Right? Our generation, when we were very, very young, was Married with Children.
Yep.
Right? And then in between is Simpsons. Right?
Yeah.
And then what is today's example of these archetypes? Family Guy.
Oh, wait.
Family Guy.
Family Guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say South Park because, and here's something wild I thought about this. I think I might have even shared it. The Simpsons, first exposure I had to them was through the Tracy Ullman Show. I was in the 4th grade. I was 10 years old. That means once they spun off and the Simpsons was created and started airing, it has been on TV for 34 years.
Well, also, when our parents were kids, you have the combination of either Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, right? And the Flintstones.
Yeah.
Which itself was based off of Jackie Gleason.
Mm-hmm.
So the lineage of of representation you can trace. And I'm not talking shit about The Simpsons, but you can see how it has degenerated or degraded into being archetypal over time. They don't really necessarily address the heavy stuff anymore. You know?
Yeah. But this is the scene I want to show. So we're just going to be quiet and we're just going to let the scene play. Again, if YouTube demands I take it out, it's on your platform, dude. But I'll do it. Fine, that's cool. But here we go.
Hi.
What are you doing here?
Look what you went away and forgot here.
Oh, I left it in the apron. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, wait a minute. What is here? What's this stuff?
Well, that's a no cholesterol egg substitute.
Egg substitute? So what am I supposed to do? Have a glass of that with my bacon?
Oh, you scramble it. At your age, too many eggs could lead to heart trouble.
Did you ever see a chicken have a heart attack?
You got me there.
Now, as long as I'm here, let me show you some of the foods that I adore. Okay? Come on, this way. Okay. Here. Huh? Number 1. This is... Oh, geez, look at this. $1.49 for Twinkies. Will you see how the basic necessaries of life is going up to the moon? Now, come over this way. What the hell are them two talking about?
They probably see us as a couple.
Couple of what?
You know, a black woman, a white man, maybe a married couple.
Oh, how ridiculous can people be?
Don't worry about it.
Oh, hey, I ain't worrying about nothing. I mean, you know, you and me, we know how wrong they are. So don't think about it. And don't you think about it. I won't. You mind your own business. let's hurry up and get out of here. Huh?
Who are you trying to get away from?
I ain't trying to get away from nothing. I'm just trying to show you some of the foods that I'm used to eating, that's all.
Gerber's strained bananas?
It makes farina taste better. Where else do you want to go? Let's go.
Sundries.
Sundries is right over here. Just pull it snappy, just...
Archie Bunker.
Oh, holy cow, Gordy, how are you?
Fine. And who's the little lady?
She ain't a little lady. She's my housekeeper.
Oh, yeah? A housekeeper?
Yeah, this is Gordy Bruns. He's the grand potentate of my lodge.
How do you do? I'm Ellen Canby.
So you call her a housekeeper?
Yeah, and a cook.
How does she cook?
Oh, she cooks great.
Archie, could
He
you
isn't
punch this
talking
guy
about
in the face?
kitchen.
Well, where else do you cook with the kitchen? Oh, no, Gordy, he don't mean nothing like that.
Sure I do.
No, you don't. Come on there, Gordy. Gordy's a hell of a kidder, you know.
Oh, yeah. He's a riot.
By the way, we got a manager special on pancake mix. Aunt Jemima.
Oh, I love Aunt Jemima. And this would be good for you. You ought to gargle with it in the morning.
Hey, Gordy, come here. I got to talk to you over here. Please, lay off of this stuff.
Not bad looking, Arch. A little tan for my taste.
I want to punch that man so bad. Holy shit.
I mean, saying, like, try doing that in a grocery store. Like, try doing what Gordy's doing today. That would absolutely get you fired on the spot.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I've talked to people about and they don't get. The quote unquote bad people will out themselves.
Yeah.
You don't need to go out of your way to hunt them down and castigate and seek them and give them the armor of being attacked or the protection of being hidden. They'll come to you and be like, "I'm a piece of shit. How are you?"
Okay, so I'm gonna get back to this. This guy is like reprehensible. Jesus.
Come on, will you? This ain't what you think.
Tell me the truth. How are they?
Gordy, you ain't talking very nice.
Really disappointed in your lodge, brother?
What the hell did I do?
You know how this looks in my market? But I shouldn't be surprised. You and your wife are always cozying up to them colored neighbors. But I didn't think you'd turn into a nigger lover.
Gordy, I'm going to hit you.
What happened?
He pulled a knife on me. Come on, let's get the hell out of here.
You be sorry about this, Bunker.
There is a God. Thank you.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And Wheeler's like, yeah, I want to knock that dick out. And he's like, yep. The fact that he used Archie to teach him more or less is genius. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. LMAO. He didn't knock him out, but he did give him something to remember. I mean, a punch to the midsection is no joke. Especially
because again, like things in modern media that don't make the rounds, right? It's not just about the bigotry towards the young woman, right? But you watch how quickly he goes from, hey, you one of us? You one of the guys? To being, you're not one of them degenerates, are you? You know,
yeah.
Bigotry negatively affects everyone it touches, including people who are ostensibly on your side. And the sad fact of the matter is, let's be honest, Archie's kind of a bigot. He really is.
He really is, yeah. And can you imagine modern TV using the N-word like that these days? Dude, that show I don't think it'd make it past the pilot. I really don't. We would have another Summer of Love on our hands.
They would inch their way right up to saying it, and then they would somehow stop it or infer it without saying it, so that you all know what they were going to say, but they didn't say. You know.
Yep. It would get that way, and the problem that exists is, we had, this is like 70s and 80s, where they're actually like entertainment actively went against it. Then in the 90s, it translated to look at how ridiculous this all is now. Look at how absolutely abjectly ridiculous this is. The Wayans brothers did In Living Color, and they had white cast members. Jim Carrey was one of them. They did these kinds of skits that even House of Buggin' by John Leguizamo, and I'm surprised no one brought that up because I remember that show. I loved that show. It was just too bad it got canceled. But they were actively mocking it as a concept. And that's why, like, past a certain point, you would see like people really kind of integrating and mingling. And then, once we had Obama elected into office, my immediate reaction to that, even though I didn't vote for him, was we can finally put it to bed. It's over. It's done. And it's worse now than ever. I'm like, how did we get to this?
Well, perfect example.
The fact that modern society tries to pretend these things don't exist is why we are in danger of repeating them historically. Absolutely.
Well, perfect example. Clean Flicks, this Mormon-run service to edit films after the fact to make them acceptable for Mormon families. Films you shouldn't be watching anyway if you're a good Mormon, right? We're going to remove the unpleasant things from them. They made a lot of money because you could sell those movies back to television stations, so they could put the films on TV, right? Like afternoon, Saturday morning television. We're gonna have an action film you can't watch otherwise, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one time I had seen Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance, right? Originally, and then I was watching the Clean Flicks version because it was on TV, right? And very early in the film, Michael Ironsides, the bad guy, is planning to get Bruce Willis
Jeremy
murdered. Jeremy Irons is planning to get Bruce Willis murdered, right? By sending him to Harlem wearing a sign that says, "I hate a certain group of people," right? And in the Clean Flicks version, they make it, "I hate everybody."
Yeah.
Right. Not even
I've actually seen that.
Not even I hate black people. I hate everybody.
Everyone. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, no, that pulls out the teeth of the entire setup right there.
Yeah.
This is one of the situations where whether you like the word or not, the context is the right word. That's how it should be. Because if you go to Harlem wearing a sign that says, "I hate the N-word," they will kill you.
Yeah, they will absolutely destroy you on the spot.
And that in turn makes it's very important here. It makes Sam Jackson's character, not only because he clearly does not like Bruce Willis, who he presumes is a racist from the get-go because he's white, because Sam Jackson's character is a racist, right? But also speaks to the nobility in Sam Jackson's character that he would go save a white dude wearing "I hate a certain kind of people" in Harlem, just because
he is one of the group,
right? Yeah. Because he's one of those people, and he doesn't want trigger happy cops in Harlem.
And he didn't even know John McClane was a cop.
Right. Exactly.
He just saw this dude standing out there with practically no clothing on, wearing that sandwich sign going. He's like, "Oh shit."
In what is a bottom of the barrel pop lit action film that everybody can love, is this profoundly powerful, albeit hilarious scene.
And the weirdest part about all this is, we don't see this anymore. This is something that educates without pandering. It does it without this heavy-handed preaching, and it does it in a way that you can look at it on surface level and go, "That's it. There you go. Right
You're
there."
telling me I'm going to get killed by some white dude's brother because you dropped another white dude off the top of a building?
Yep. And hey, Whelan, I love that movie too. That is I think that's like one of my favorite Die Hard movies, because it's not, how does the same shit happen to the same guy twice? It wasn't that. Right. We got a bit of a departure this time. And we also had a callback to the first one. Yeah. We also had a callback to the first one, and it was really good. And yeah, I'm a little sad that Bruce had to retire. I don't know that he would take many jobs these days. Anyway,
Well, he was taking a bunch of garbage jobs because he was trying to get what money he could before he had to retire.
yeah,
What I find truly sad is that the man wants to work and he tried. He apparently tried an off Broadway, right?
yeah,
And the fact he was wearing a hearing aid and being fed his lines was really obvious, and people
yeah,
were not very charitable about it.
yeah,
But it's like the guy's suffering the onset of a serious problem and is still vigorous enough he can act. He's done the turns. He's had the beating.
yeah. I mean, life really dealt him both a good and cruddy hand because he is a great actor, very athletic. He's also the kind of guy that, like, when you watch one of his action movies, whether it's The Last Boy Scout or Die Hard, anyone can relate to him because he's not the typical action hero who's just good at everything. This guy goes through some shit, and that's where you can. I mean, anyone could see themselves in that situation, going, "I just don't think I would be able to do it." But this guy's like scared to death.
Here's some lesser known Bruce Willis facts, though. He's also a song and dance man, as you saw in Hudson Hawk, right? And he's a musician.
Yep.
He plays the blues on harmonica. It's amazing.
Yeah, he really is good. Now, other actors have tried to dip their toes into music as well. Don Johnson and Eddie Murphy come to mind.
Steve Martin with the banjo.
Steve Martin with the banjo. Who else? I almost said John Tesh, but not him. He's not.
I'm going to be a jerk. Even though I love me Alice Cooper and I like the idea of the Superman Hollywood vampires, Johnny Depp is not a rock star. I'm sorry, Johnny. You'll never be a rock star. I know you play guitar. I know you want to be cool, but you can't sell me on it.
Bruno Radellini. I know him. What did he do? I don't really know. David Hasselhoff is apparently very, very, very big in Germany.
I've actually been told by people who live in Germany that he's not as big as he used to.
Okay,
but I mean that's just because tastes change over time. He was like big for what, like a decade and a half or 2 decades, maybe. I
would say if he ever wanted to revive his career, dude, you better get on board with some metal and just kind of like ride Deropesh's coattails.
Look, he still got it because he did that song for Kung Fury.
True. Yeah. I completely forgot about that movie, and I've watched it a couple times.
Wait, you don't want to hear the epic Asian action tale of how a cop from the future goes into the past with a Viking and a dinosaur to fight the Kung Fuhrer?
Really? Let's see. Bruno was Bruce's musician persona. Okay, that's okay. Really, that was him. Yeah, apparently. I really didn't. I don't know. It's like I think Eddie Murphy did pretty well.
Wait a minute. Hot take time. I just want to throw this out there. Hot take time. David Hasselhoff was the best Nick Fury.
You know what? I'm going to say this. He was the most comic book accurate.
Yes.
Nick Fury, because he was surly as fuck.
The differential is that Hasselhoff is 616 Fury. Sam Jackson, by design, is Ultimate Nick Fury. They're two different Nick Furies. That's the thing people gotta understand.
I think Hasselhoff really did a good job with the cigar chomping, eye patch wearing, surly attitude Nick Fury. I think it was great. I actually know some people. The house that I went to run Hero Quest about a week or two ago. I was there and we were talking about Marvel films. And I brought up the old 90s movies, and I was like, yeah, Captain America's suit was rubber. Of course, Batman's suit was rubber. They were Marvel was getting a little stupid greedy, and they did make a Nick Fury film, which had David Hasselhoff and Lisa Rinna. And I started describing this, and one of them looked at me and went, wait, who? I went, David Hasselhoff actually played Nick Fury. And she was like, really? I'm like, yeah, you've got to see it. It's a terrible movie, but it's a comic book accurate depiction of what Nick Fury is actually like.
It is in the same vein as the Roger Corman Fantastic Four film. It's so bad it's great. It lovingly adheres to the comics, and it's literally like if they had just given it budget, if they had just trusted in it to be good and actually made it good, it could have been great.
Yeah, and look, I'll be honest with you. When I found out Sam Jackson was going to play Nick Fury, I really didn't have a problem with it. Like, I'm a Samuel L. Jackson fan. I love his work. It's like no matter what role, like you put him in Black Snake Moan, you put him in Time to Kill, Pulp Fiction, Star Wars. It does not matter. That is always Sam Jackson is always going to peek right through that costume, but he will totally change his appearance to fit that character. And I love it. I absolutely think it's great.
I like Sam Jackson, but the film that sold me on him when he was a not less of a talent, but a less well-known talent, is a little-known film noir, a neo-noir with should I forget the actress's name? But it's called Long Kiss Goodnight.
I love that movie.
That is an amazing
Gina
film.
Davis is the one.
With Gina Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We speaking of which, we also lost Ray Stevenson not too long ago. And
very sad.
Yeah, and honestly, I gotta say this: I liked Punisher Warzone. I didn't love it, but I actually had to watch Razorfist retrospective on the Punisher Warzone to realize, that was the most comic book accurate portrayal of the Punisher.
The thing is that Ray Stevenson, much like Jason Momoa as Conan, Ray Stevenson's an excellent Punisher. He had everything he needed to be to do that job, right? The story on that film, okay, not only screwed in editing by corporate mismanagement, screwed by Gail Ann Hurd in production. I loathe that woman. She is a blight on comics-based media, just because people didn't like her husband's Tom Jane Punisher film, which I didn't mind. But
I loved it.
But it somehow didn't do good enough, and people were like, "This movie's bad, therefore, eh." But ultimately, the movie was a malaise of half stories taken from different runs in Punisher Max, and did none of them well. And it was not a very good film, and that's sad because Stevenson was great. If you haven't seen Black Sails, Stevenson plays Blackbeard, and he's amazing.
I haven't seen that yet, but I'm gonna say this: White Rat says that he really liked the Tom Jane Punisher film. So did I. Here's the thing: I'm going to admit something right now. My first impression of the Tom Jane Punisher film when the trailers began to air was, oh, fuck. Because I was looking at it, and here he is. He's wearing a trench coat. He's carrying guns. He's dressed all in black. And I'm like, great. There's the Columbine kid. That's what this movie's going to be. Well, it was nothing like that. So because I actually watched it and I enjoyed it. It was a very grounded Punisher film, but it was a little too deep and introspective for my taste. But I did like it. And here's some interesting stuff about that movie. The scene where he stabs the Russian in the shoulder with that butterfly knife, he legit, and that was Kevin Nash. He did that too. He legit stabbed Kevin Nash.
No, that's the thing. It was a mistake.
Yeah, it was a mistake.
It was supposed to be the fake knife. He stabbed him, realized he did it with the real knife. The shock on Tom Jane's face is both, I have just stabbed a man, and he's not going down, is real.
And Kevin Nash, God's bless him, the amount of professionalism he showed, he didn't react. I was like, had that been me, I'd been like, motherfucker, or something like that. But he didn't react. However, there's a scene where Thomas Jane gets thrown through the wall, bounces off the opposite wall in the hallway, and hits the floor. That legit happened. Kevin Nash actually threw his ass through a wall. So not only did he get stabbed, Tom Jane got the receipt. I was like, Jesus. Now watching it, afterwards, I'm like, holy fuck, that is the most brutal sequence I've ever seen in my life, and it's amazing.
So here's the thing, Waylon. The Netflix Punisher in Daredevil, when he makes his appearance, I'm okay with. Okay? That's pretty good. Once they have him segue into his own series, it's a disaster. The Punisher series was good for maybe half a season, and then just went right in the can. Because they wouldn't let Frank be Frank. They wouldn't let the Punisher do Punisher. And now, well, Ray Wolfgar, if you didn't know, they're removing the Punisher from Marvel.
Yep.
And while they're at it, before they do it, they're of course emasculating him.
Yep, I saw that.
Yeah. So you know, it's pretty bad to be a Punisher fan right now.
Well, hey, you know what? We can bring this conversation full circle and wrap up right here, because look at Conan the Barbarian, and then look at the Punisher.
Right.
Now, Conan does have some revenge stories, not many, but some.
Right.
Similarly, Solomon Kane, men will die for this. And then the Punisher is showing that savage barbarism in that civilized setting, because he's a bad guy who, according in the eyes of the law, he's a bad guy who is taking out even worse bad guys, because he doesn't want a repeat of what happened to him happening to anyone.
Very briefly, because we're actually coming up on time, we're a little bit over. It's your show, do what you want, but I'm just saying. Conan, in his revenge stories, it's often very personal. You wronged me, I'm getting mine. Right? If it's Kane, it's injustices occur when good men do nothing, and this is a time of lawlessness. Because the law is weak during the wars. The countryside is rife with evil. Evil happens outside of civilization, away from prying eyes. Right?
Yeah.
The Punisher is in civilization. Evils get done, and there are villains who think they can walk between the raindrops because they've got such power and such nuance that their wrong do not touch them. And that's what he's after. He doesn't just kill mob guys because the mob killed my family, so the mob gotta die. It's not just that. It's Frank Castle wrestling with the problem that our society, even well-intentioned, right, has created systems and structures where people with ill intents exploit our benevolence to get away with murder, literally. And people forget that that's because the Punisher was inspired by Dirty Harry. Now, Dirty Harry was a contentious film at the time. Real cops don't like that level of fantasizing and sort of wish fulfillment, revenge stuff. But it's all because you have Escobedo, you have Miranda, these very important tools that are curtailing police's hands where they have exploitation and abuse, right? But are allowing real villains like the Scorpio to hurt people. And Dirty Harry is struggling with that. Frank Castle is saying, in the Marvel universe, where there are superheroes, there are bad guys who still get away with it. That's why the best Punisher stories are Punisher versus the Kingpin. Because the Kingpin is the gold ring for the Punisher. He's the ultimate mobster who gets away with it.
Yep. Every time. And if they're not going and honestly, I'm good with Marvel just canceling the line, because quite honestly, if they're not going to do it right, just don't fucking do it. Don't do it at all.
Here's the thing. This is a weird comparison, and people are gonna be like, "What?" But I'm serious. The Punisher is to Marvel as Batman is to DC.
True.
Batman at his best is a detective story in which Batman finds a crime, investigates a crime, and resolves a crime. Right? The best Punisher stories are Punisher finds bad guys, discovers a crime, plans and executes a punishment. Right? All contained within like 12 pages, 20 pages. That's it. That's all you need for a good Punisher story. He doesn't need swords and ninjas. He doesn't need Spider-Man, although we always love it when Spidey and the Punisher, have to clash. He doesn't need a lot of extra doodads. You just need the Punisher to fight bad guys and the bad guys to lose.
There, and that was something you pointed out in an earlier podcast where Batman and the Punisher crossed paths, both of them hunting down the Joker. Punisher gets the drop on Joker, and Joker's like, well, I guess I'm just going back to Arkham Asylum. And Punisher's like, nah.
Right.
And then he realizes, oh, fuck, he's going to do it. And
Well-
Batman manages to save him at the last possible second, tells him run like hell.
Right.
And then, of course, they have their face off. But here's something I don't think we've talked about before. Superman actually, like when Batman caught the Joker again for the umpteenth time,
Right.
Superman actually asks him, why are you not taking this dude out? You know he's going to break out. You know he's going to do it again. And, of course, Batman says his piece, and Superman's like, what? And literally punches through Joker's chest and rips his heart out, kills him.
Well,
and Batman's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Remember, that story specifically is one in which the Joker, in order to have some fun, takes out Lois Lane.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And I think the important thing there is, as much as we love to shit talk the one rule because it's more of a corporate decision than a bat decision, right? It's also the proof of concept, right? Because Superman, compared to Batman, is the best of us. Batman would say we should aspire to be Clark Kent because Clark Kent is a decent human being.
Right.
Right? Batman would agree that the fact he has to exist is a horrible indictment and a failure of society. No one should have to be Bruce Wayne. No one should have to suffer as he suffered. Right? Yeah. And if a villain can turn the best of us into a monster with one cruel act, then we are all diminished. Killing a murderer would not fix that. Killing a murderer would just perpetuate the systems of evil that lead to more murderers.
Well, this is a problem I think the Christopher Nolan Batman films actually fixed, and I think it was a good one. And this is why I love the Nolan films, because here Batman has Ra's al Ghul right in front of him, and the train they're on is heading for just utter destruction, and he tells him, I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. And he just backs out, and then you see Ra's al Ghul look up like, oh, shit. Right as the train makes impact and, utterly destroys him.
Well, see,
I thought that was a good take, unlike, and I do love the Keaton Batman films, but in that one, Keaton's Batman almost seems to take a little bit of delight in killing the bad guys.
The thing is that I think the DC perspective is that if Batman didn't do his all to save someone, that he would be culpable for failing to render aid and therefore being a murderer. Which there's a certain interpretation that that's correct, right? But Nolan's Batman at least admits that we live in a real world, he's presenting a world without a Superman, basically, right? And real people have to make those decisions, right? They love to say that Batman's crusade is a war, right? Well, in war, you have unfortunate situations where it's like, okay, I have several options. 1, I can take you prisoner. 2, I can kill you. 3, I can let you go, and you will reveal our position to enemy forces because you can't be trusted to keep your mouth shut. And unfortunately for you, Geneva's 3,000 miles that way, and nobody's here.
True. But and this is one Batman 2 was my favorite. Same, my favorite of the Keaton Batman films. That in fact I thought that was a superior movie to the first one, and I loved the first one.
It is unfortunate that oh shit, his name's out of my head. The director,
Tim Burton.
Yeah, Tim Burton. It's unfortunate why Tim Burton made Batman 2. He was basically told by Warner Brothers, because he wasn't a big power yet, if you want to keep making movies in Hollywood, you're making us a Batman sequel. So he really put forth a half-hearted effort, and Tim Burton's half-hearted efforts are still head and shoulders above most people's full effort, right? But then you see what he did.
Effort then is better than the full efforts.
That's the problem. Is now that you look at what he does when he's an actual power behind the scenes, it's like, man, this sucks. You're being lazy. What is this garbage?
Yeah, like I personally love these parallels between these characters because you can still go back to Conan the Barbarian. You can see the influence there. I mean, it may not be sword and sorcery. We may be talking, spandex and capes, but still, it's there. These people, and even with the Punisher, there was some nuance. I mean, he didn't go around killing every bad guy. He didn't kill everyone. He was going after the big fish.
The Punisher is very much like the Boondock Saints
Mhm.
in that there are varying degrees of evil, and quote, you lesser forms of filth should be on notice. The Punisher doesn't care about a child mugger. He
No.
doesn't care about a guy who's on the make selling hot VCRs. Not
No.
really. Especially if that person can be useful in some fashion. Right?
Yeah.
But if you are a drug dealer selling crack to kids, if you are a guy with a protection racket extorting mom and pop stores, and especially if you are the big fish with a lawyer who just walked out of a murderer RICO case, and you're going to go back to your multi-million-dollar villa where you think you are secure and nothing can touch you, the boogeyman is behind you.
And the thing is, in the eyes of the law, Frank Castle, that dude's headed for a death penalty case, a capital murder case at the very least. But also consider he's committed assault, extortion, kidnapping, amongst the other, actual crimes that we have statutes for. He's done it all. But at the very least, he was at least somewhat philosophically consistent.
Well, he has the devil's argument, which is a good one that Marvel seems to have forgotten. Frank's argument was always the ends justify the means. My end is to destroy evil by punishing it. The means, or whatever means I can, including their means, because they brought it on themselves.
Yeah.
He would never make a criminal cartel. He would never extort mom and pops.
No.
Right? But just like Blade, hey guys, remember Blade with Wesley Snipes? He was not above, oh look, all this money that these bad guys got, well, they're not using it. I guess I'll help myself for the cause.
And this was a good one because this was actually pointed out in the comic books. There are at least some boys in blue that loved it for making their job easier. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's an entire page in one of the Punisher comics where the cops caught up to him and they were like, "Oh wait, hold up, you're him. Okay, can we get a picture with you? Man, my kids are gonna love this." And he deletes the picture that was taken. He's like, "No, you have rules you have to follow. I don't follow those rules. We're not the same." And he walks, and they let him.
Well,
some of them back him.
Well, it's one of my favorite bits of Punisher Max is, the evil government agencies send assassins, the mob hires assassins, some old friends in the military-industrial complex who are like, Frank is making the flag look bad. They don't send assassins so much as they peddle influence to try and create scenarios where Frank will get caught. Yeah. And who finally catches him? Who finally actually brings him in? A couple of blue clothes who literally run into him by accident, right? He punches one of them in the face, takes his sidearm, disarms it, drops all the chamber on the ground, spills out all the bullets, right? And is going to keep walking. And the partner is like, no, man, I got you covered. He's like, shit. And you just see Frank put his hands behind his head, get on his knees, and be arrested because Frank will not kill a perceived innocent. Unfortunately, cops just doing their job. They might be subject to assault. They might be subject to being ignored, but they're not subject to death.
Yeah. There was a comic series inside the Punisher where he actually did go down. Like he was actually convicted and sentenced.
Right.
And he gets cut up because I think he runs into Jigsaw or some of his boys. And they cut up his face. Mm-hmm. He does escape, and then he has reconstructive surgery. And I don't know if they ever did anything with this, but the reconstructive surgery, the means of altering what he looked like, so he'd be unrecognizable, is they turned, which was a little far-fetched, they turned him into a black man.
Yeah, I remember that comic.
And I don't think
Uh,
they ever did anything with it.
They didn't. It was a spot gag.
Yeah.
But my favorite Punisher comic, there was actually a comic where they had an opening editorial, and they said, hey, this is a very special book because it's the Punisher with no dialogue. We just want to tell a story visually, right? And at the beginning of his day, the Punisher steps out on the street and he's doing Punisher things, and he finds some kids who are getting given their free dose of drugs by some drug dealer. So Frank quietly murders the drug dealer, stuffs him in a garbage can, walks over to the kids, takes the drugs, pours it out, and basically tells them go to school. Right?
Yeah.
And then goes about his Punisher day, hunting down a bad guy doing Punisher things.
And
right?
There was the series that
wait,
was penciled by John Romita Jr. called The Punisher Warzone. I remember when this came out because being a Punisher fan,
let me finish that because you're gonna love this. So he's doing Punisher things. He catches the bad guy, shoots the bad guy. Day is saved, right? He goes home to his safe house or apartment wherever he's hiding, only to discover that in the time he's been gone, right, those kids found a gun off of the drug dealer that Frank murdered, right? And one of them got shot and is dead in the street, and the other one's going to jail, right? And it's just, again, the Punisher is one man. He can fight as many bad guys as he wants, but he can't save everybody.
Yeah, true. But the Punisher Warzone series that was penciled by John Romita Jr., I distinctly remember that because there was a few issue arc where Frank's life was actually pretty idyllic. He had the nice 2-story in suburbia. His family was there. And I think it was some like serious MK Ultra stuff. They were playing around with Frank's PTSD, and I was like, wasn't one of my favorites, but I appreciated the brilliance of it. And I was like, I really kind of wish they had done a little more with that. And I think the Netflix series tried, but I think they just totally blew the landing on it.
Well, here's an interesting argument because over at the Gospel Comics we have a standing $12.45 for Marvel. We'll buy it from DC for $12.45. Marvel's fucking up because they've got the tool to have an interesting Frank Castle series, having Frank fight the right wing if they really want to take it to the righties. Okay, one of the very early Frank Castle storylines that still exists. The group did not get fully destroyed because it's a conspiracy, right? Is a group of rich bastards who think that they know better how to bring about law and justice than the people, right? So one of the things they do is they capture Frank and they try to brainwash him because they're brainwashing criminals to be expendable Frank clones. So they can just release basically school shooters in a Frank outfit to take out people they deem to be bad or, insufficient to society. Have Frank fight a criminal conspiracy like that. That's what Frank should be doing.
Yeah.
If you want, and you know why they didn't do it? I'll tell you why they didn't do it. It's not just leftist politics. It's because right now, you and I, that they don't want Marvel attacking the military-industrial complex because they need tanks and planes for their Marvel movies. That's why.
Exactly. But in any case, I think that wraps up everything really nicely. Puts a nice little bow on it. Very nice packaging. And I think we can call it here tomorrow. I hope you'll be here, Joe, because
same time,
yeah. Jason
Okay, cool.
Jason Bays is coming on. We're going to be talking about Wasted Lands, which, if you have not heard about Wasted Lands, let me give you the sales pitch right now. Okay. This is going to be a different fantasy game than what you're used to. This one takes place in sort of a prehistory of Earth, where the old gods have been banished. The Earth is in a state of upheaval. Everything's kind of messed up. And your character's deeds get passed down through history in the weirdest game of telephone, and you essentially become a god. So I really want you guys to check that out tomorrow, same time, 11:15 a.m. I realize I messed up, and I really want to thank Giant Slayer Games for telling me that I messed up. I messed up the time and put 11:15 p.m. It's not p.m. It's going to be a.m. I like to get this like into the day and out of the way. And this is Wasted Lands, The Dreaming Age, which will be on Kickstarter very, very soon. By the way, thanks for joining us, Felbrig. I know you kind of just came in. Damnedest Bastard, I'm hoping to have him on again because that was great. I loved having him around. And thank you all for joining us. And this is just, personally, I think check out Wasted Lands, check out Night Shift. I will have links in the description below for tomorrow's show. I'm going to get on that like right now. I'll be posting this to all the other platforms. Hopefully we don't get those strikes because we were showing it on YouTube. So if they do, I'll cut those out and you can check us out on Cloud Hub, Rumble, or Odyssey, to get the full version. I do have a Discord. I am never really on it though. And the reason I'm never on it is because once they started coming up with this, if we find you, if you're accused of wrong think anywhere, we can ban you. I was like, no, fuck off. So I was like, I kind of closed it out and just never, I only opened it once because I had won a drawing. I was like, it was for a Castles and Crusades t-shirt. And I was like, I got to be on Discord for this. Okay. So I went in and I did that. But I am on Gilded. You can find me there. Same name, Raven Wolfgar.
So as we're wrapping up, I have homework for the audience. You consider it extra credit because we're not your pop, we're not your teachers. You don't have to do it, but I think it'll be good for you. So of course, do what you love and the like. But because in celebration of Damnedest Bastard, I think everybody should hit the YouTube or your preferred media or Spotify or pull out your old cassette tapes. Find yourself some Basil Polidorus. Listen to that 30th anniversary book, Conan the Barbarian or Conan the Destroyer soundtrack. Just go into a Conan hole and ruminate. Absorb those tones.
I'm also going to, and this is just because I've loved it. I'm in into season 2 of Old Gods of Appalachia now, and I do recommend that podcast. It starts a little slow, and yes, it jumps around to different people, different characters. However, once it starts getting underway, you start to see where those characters tie together, and man, the longer it's going, the more fucked up it's getting. I'll be honest with you, there are times where I listen to that and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be okay after this, because yeesh. But if Monty Cook Games would ever just get back to me and answer my question, then I'll consider whether or not I actually want to get on board and buy the
which question is this?
Is this going to have safety tools and X cards and
yeah,
stuff like that? The only reason I do not buy those games is because I don't consciously buy them, because if someone else sees me with that book, they have an expectation, and that expectation is, oh, he'll employ these, and the answer to that is no, I really won't.
Oh, I
I'll
mean,
employ those methods.
I mean, you and I know how they get on Gilded, talking about following the rules. You don't follow the rules, you're house ruling, and you're not playing D&D. Okay, but I will posit. Here we go. I'm going to be adversarial. I'm gonna make fun of the OSR in public. Oh no, guys! If we did that, if we followed every rule because of the rules and the rules had to be followed, then any game printed after a certain time period is going to have rules in it that are awful, like Lines and Veils and X card, and you would have to run with those too, and you can't make me. I am a huge fan of Werewolf the Forsaken, as I have mentioned. In Werewolf the Forsaken 2nd Ed, they have a section called the 10 Commandments, where they give 10 dictums that DMs are supposed to use. And I looked at them, and I laughed, and then I laughed harder because they were serious, and then I said, these I will never fucking use, because they're garbage, because you can't make me.
And the only reason I asked was because Shauna Germain is obviously working on the game, and we know she's responsible for a lot of this because she's an erotica writer. And personally, there have been times where character relationships have popped up. There have been times where characters are gonna, they're gonna go do the mattress mambo, but those have always been faded to black.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about that. I recall the other day somebody was commenting about the Gore RPG very negatively, and there's good reason for that. There's a reason that people in the authorial community were like, Gore needs to not be on the shelf next to Dragonlance, guys. There's a reason for that, right?
But
but
the question is, how much control do you have over your own buying? Because that's
Sure.
what it comes down to.
Right.
If you don't like the game,
But-
just don't fucking buy it.
but
I mean,
here's the
there are
thing.
games I've passed on because I just
Well-
didn't connect with them, or I just
the-
didn't care for them.
Well, the reason I mention it is because Grim Jim is working on some Gorian content. He's into that kind of intense lifestyle content, and I like Grim Jim. I love Jim. Jim's great. I would be willing to look at it, whether it's my thing or not, because Grim wrote it, right? And that's the thing, is that you can't unilaterally dismiss something because it disagrees with you. And that works both ways. That works for players, for consumers. That also should work for people producing. People producing need to understand that you're making books for the general market for all tastes, not just for your special friends' tastes.
Same. And there was, like, with Wretched is the New Black, the one game I was going to work on, there was a mechanic I was going to throw in there as an option. And I called it the adrenaline card. Now, what this is if players are insistent that all their fears and phobias and triggers and blah, blah, blah have to be listed, and this is whether or not that insistence comes up. You as the game master have an optional rule, and you could choose to use it or not, doesn't matter. But it was for a 10 candles setting that I wrote. And as a matter of fact, I can find it and show it to you because it really was something I threw it out there. And if people wanted to use it, great. If not, that's fine too. It wasn't anything that you absolutely had to have. But let's see, it's going to be right here.
I am Sad Town now.
But I'm going to scroll down to it that way I can show it to you. The okay, optional GM rules. Here we go, and we're going to share that screen because this was one I thought of. And feel free to use it in your own games. It's fine. This is for 10 candles, so I presented this scenario here, and the adrenaline card, themes of race, sex, sexuality, blood, guts, fingers, and toes, and all the other things that make play uncomfortable will probably come up. Remember, this was a prison setting, y'all. Some players, and even you, GM, may want to use the X cards, but we're going to use them a little differently. They're now adrenaline cards. Have all the players write down or tick off from a list of fears and phobias of their characters and examine them. None of this will be off limits. In fact, you're encouraged to now use them for, well, who else? Them. Just to give you a little background, if you're not familiar with 10 Candles, lurking in the shadows lies a collective of beings known only as them. So since they have not been clearly defined, you can then custom tailor them to embody the greatest fears and phobias of that character. In this particular storytelling game, the adrenaline card becomes something for the players to tell the DM what setting appropriate elements they would actually like to see in a tragic horror game. So example, if one of the staff has a debilitating fear of clowns, they will emerge from the inky shadows as murderous clowns, insanely screaming, "Why don't you like my fucking ice cream?" Which I took that from a YouTube video. There was also terror and overdrive. Turn it up to 11, goes hand in hand with the adrenaline card. So you turn up the intensity as desired by you and the players. Again, it implies that there is consent here and that there's comfort with doing it. So a scale of 1 being something like Tales from the Dark Side, the TV show, to 10 being something more disturbing like Hostel, the Saw franchise, or Stephen King's It 1 and 2.
See, I'm a bastard. I have a friend who is, they say they're not afraid of, but they are intimidated by owls.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In Vampire the Requiem, one of the primary antagonist types are the Owls of Dis, who possess vampires and ride them like puppets.
Right.
Right? I really want to use them on them. I just haven't told them about it. I'm like holding it in my back pocket and waiting. I'm just waiting.
So the 2 examples I cite here are Officer. This is a 1. So, and I put this in here, a score of 1 would be mere mention of something horrible happening or fading to black the moment the nightmare occurs, which results in a character's end. So, example, Officer Sanders is overheard whispering to his sergeant about an inmate he heard was seen by him. I should have put it there. Or no, just by an inmate he heard was seen being dragged by a hideous beast into the shadows, pleading for help. No other details are mentioned other than the trail of blood left behind. Now, a score of 10 would be a little more disturbing, vivid, and graphic. So Officer Sanders is making rounds, hears screams from a darker area of the corridor, finds an inmate being partially devoured by a twisted demonic shade. Both of her legs have been chewed off. She screams and pleads for help, but the shade lunges at her throat, biting and chewing, choking off her screams in the scuffle. As the red-eyed shade looks up and sees the flashlight, it emits an unearthly roar and quickly snatches the inmate by the throat again, attempting to drag her into the shadows to escape the officer's LED light. It succeeds in tearing her throat completely away, blood coming from a deluge in the gaping wounds. It snatches her by the V-neck opening of her scrub shirt, dislodging her ID badge, and quickly disappears into a shadow, leaving only the inmate's ID and a trail of blood and viscera leading to a corner where light reveals there's nothing there.
Well, here's the thing. This is a real story. This is not just me coming up with something. There was an author who wrote for a book on how to write a commentary about what is too much. When do you go too far? And he described that he was writing a serial killer thriller, right, in which the killer had flensed a cat and put it in a sack, a little kitten, right, and somebody finds it. And they had two versions. One where they graphically described the cat, and they thought that's too much. Nobody's going to like that. So they said, "Well, we won't describe it. We'll infer what the cat has had done to it, right?" And they took it to their reader, their test reader, not a sensitivity reader, but just a does this read well, which was their wife, right? And she was like, "Well, yeah, the one where you describe it's pretty good. I hate the one where you don't. It's so awful. I hate it." And they're like, "Okay, well, we'll go with the one where we describe it." And she's like, "No, leave in the one that I hate. It's better because not knowing how maimed the animal was so much more deeply affecting, right?" And I use that in my horror games. So, you step into what's an otherwise clean room, well appointed, well upholstered, fancy furniture, and everything looks real nice and inviting. And yet, because you rolled a high success on your perception check, I'm like, around the base of the easy chair, you find a small spattering of blood droplets and one clean, perfect human tooth. And it's like, why is there a tooth on the floor? Why is there blood in this well-appointed room? And there's nothing else. I'm not going to tell you anything else. But your brain will do all the legwork for me.
Yeah, and it's completely, like I said, it's completely up to you. These were optional rules, so feel free to use them or don't. It's totally up to you. But I like this one. Whelan, I've told that story too. I would be this player. I do not like snakes.
And
bring a snake of any kind into the equation, you better be out of my way when I'm moving to get away from it. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt.
But that's the thing.
But here's the thing: if you introduce that into a game, I don't have a problem with it. I literally just don't.
Well, because Whelan says the next two bits, which is the player will never forget it, and then of course they would never bring an actual snake to game. They're not a douchebag.
Correct. And it's like I've said before. Look, if you find yourself starting to get overwhelmed by that, look up, look around, and realize you've never been safer. You are sitting around a table with friends, and the biggest threat to your health is the junk food. And of course, now obviously never bring a real snake because I'm not a douche. Gaming is playing make believe, and all things are fair. Yes, exactly. Especially in horror, that's what it's supposed to be. I cringe at eye stuff, and
we'll see.
I'm going to say this. There is in fact, I'll just bring it up. I'll bring up the PDF because this is so over the top that I was like, this is so wild to me.
Well, see, I'm a nut while you're pulling this up because I put forth the argument that all fantasy, in fact, like good fantasy, is horror on some level, right? And I'll use the classic. I'll go deep dive. When Frodo and Sam are in Mordor, and encounter Shelob, right? All those furry legs and all the crawling and all the webs, and if they don't escape, they're gonna die and be eaten by a spider, right? That's
Yep.
horrifying. Those are elements of horror in the most classic high fantasy, right?
Yep.
You should, in fact, be horrified by the revelation of the Balrog, as you can hear it coming and you can see the flames without seeing it and all the buildup before it's there, and then when you finally do see it, what is it? It's a shadow covered in fire.
Right, exactly. And yeah, I agree. Who the hell wants to play a horror RPG wrapped in bubble wrap? And yeah, we do know some people.
But bubblegum goths who
these are
think
people
that pink is
they
a
want
goth
to
color.
play Tales from the Dark Side. So they want to play Tales from the Dark Side. You want to go a little more edgy, you play Tales from the Crypt. But the book I'm going to be showing you, it's from this one. And this book is, for those of you who are looking at it and immediately going, this is a book that is literally, that whole volume right here is all talking about the magic missile spell. And this, what I'm showing right here, is one of those things. Let me just go to it real quick. This one, Abscessive Eruption. The caster's gums bulge far out of her mouth, then explode in a burst of gore as one or more fist size and carious teeth fly from the jaw. The wound closes as quickly as it formed, but for the next D4 rounds, the caster's breath reeks, causing a penalty of 2 to all charisma reaction checks from anyone within 2 paces. And then, right before that, is this massive monster. Holy.
Wait a minute. Scroll back down. I love Alcardian Bedfellows.
Alcardian Bedfellows with one or both hands. The caster peels down the skin covering her larynx. That larynx then detaches from its upper end and curls forward, emitting a sonic lance of coherent blasphemies. That the bellows inflict an additional point of damage per die against animate targets composed of thin and brittle materials, a stony carapace, and then they automatically shatter glass or crockery for the next 3 rounds. The caster's voice cracks. I still can't get over, I looked at that, I was like, well, I'm never going to unsee that. now that I've seen it, you got to see it, and you're going to show this to friends, because there ain't no way in hell I'm suffering alone. So,
I believe I have mentioned before in the Red Ministries, I'm working on blood sorcery. I have a chart of blood sorcery results. Okay, not as good as those. Full disclosure, those are amazing. But in my own scribbles, when you do a blood sorcery ritual, you roll a 1d6, right?
Yeah.
If you roll a 1, you just get tainted blood that's toxic. It does nothing. It's just a foul soup you gotta get rid of, right? If you roll a 2, little horrors. The pool of supernaturally charged goo becomes 1d12 fleshy 6-inch tall creatures like gremlins who hate the ritualists and seek their downfall through cruel, mischievous tricks. If you roll a 3, you get squirming thing. The pile of flesh and blood sacrifice becomes animate, but unable to move or act beyond making pathetic noises and longing for death.
Wow.
If you roll a 4, we accept your offering. The ritualist is not harmed, but the blood is absorbed into the earth or floor and evaporates, leaving nothing. If you roll a 5, skinless hounds. The sacrifices transform into 1d4 minus 2 4-legged hounds of muscle and sinew. These creatures have no loyalty, but can be compelled into service. And if you roll a 6, my personal favorite, we will take you. Ephemeral shadows made of blood manifest into the air and attack the ritualist, and will tear 1d4 plus 2 hit points of blood from the ritualist. Don't botch your sorcery.
No, don't. Definitely don't. But yeah, this is gaming has turned into the cool kids club somehow, and now everyone wants in, and it's like, they're not cool. We need to bring back Philip Seymour Hoffman just to give him that "You're not cool" speech from Almost Famous. You're not cool.
Can we find that clip? Because I don't recall that speech. Is that on the YouTube? I mean, they're already going to make us pull stuff out, so why the fuck not?
Okay, so you're not cool. Let's see.
Uh, White Rat, that is incredibly high praise. Thank you.
Let's see. Go almost. Not cool. Here we go. Okay, so it's like 1:41. I think we'll get away with that. All right. Let me just
And
pause this.
And we can use that to close out.
Close this show out.
Because
Yeah.
we were closing out an hour ago. Now we're 45 minutes over.
All right. So here we go. We're going to share that screen again. This time, uncool. Okay. Here we go. And closing out. Let's play it.
Oh man, you made friends with them. See, friendship is the booze they feed you. They want you to get drunk and feeling like you belong.
Well, it was fun.
Because they make you feel cool. And hey, I met you. You are not cool.
I know. Even when I thought I was, I knew I wasn't.
Because we are uncool. No, while women will always be a problem for guys like us, most of the great art in the world is about that very problem. Good-looking people, they got no spine. Their art never lasts. And they get the girls. But we're smarter.
Yeah, I can really see that now.
Yeah, because great art is about guilt and longing and, love disguises sex and sex disguises love. Hey, let's face it. You got a big head start.
I'm glad you were home.
I'm always home. I'm uncool.
Me too.
You're doing great. The only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool. That's my advice to you. And I know you think these guys are your friends. If you want to be a true friend to them, be honest and unmerciful.
Yeah.
I think the wisest words there and the most applicable to our role playing experiences, Wolfgar, is the only currency in this world is what you share when you're uncool, and we all share nerd games at the table. That's always been it. That's why it attracts nerds, because we're not cool, but we love stories.
Not cool. We're always at home, unless we're at work or doing some adulting shit. We're always home, man. We don't have social lives. We don't have all that crap. It's why I like. Okay, when I was a kid, I attended baseball card shows, so you could kind of count that as a convention. I thought that was pretty cool. That was all right, but never really like connected with any celebrities there. It was just people buying, selling, and trading cards. That was it. That was all. That's all it was.
Why did you hand paint 2,000 points of Space Marines that are all perfectly appropriate to this? To the appearance of the setting, and each one is individually marked with different battle damage so that they're all unique? Because you're not getting blowjobs. That's why.
You're cool. You're not cool. Well, let me tell you something. Being cool, I'll just be honest. There was a gap in my gaming and everything else because I didn't have people who wanted to play. I had people around me. The resources were available. Nobody wanted to play. They didn't understand it, and I couldn't make them. And we did other things, and we were still uncool.
And
I have no problem being uncool. It's never been an issue with me.
And here's the great contradiction: being uncool is cool.
Yeah.
Not just because they say it is, but because when you actually look at the people that are popular, the people that used to keep us out, people that are trying to invade our hobby now, the preppies, the jocks, the pretty kids, the popular ones, they're vapid. They got nothing going on.
You're empty, dude.
The few that do, right, assuming their mom and dad don't make them do cheer and band and chorus and all those things, are people who want to be there, who are going to be artists and creators one day because that's what they're seeking. And they're basically being uncool in the cool kids group.
Yep. I mean, we're kind of used to it, being the social outcasts and everything. That's something that we're okay. We're on board with that.
But that's the thing. That's a conversation you and I have had multiple times. Is I don't buy into that narrative, even though I know that narrative exists and is almost true. Is like, well, you're a social outcast. It's like I was never in. How can I be outcast from a thing I was never in? This is my in group. I am one of these people, and I'm fine with it. the only people that tell me I'm an outcast are the people who don't want to associate with me, as if their vaunted status was important.
Exactly. That's why we say, doesn't matter. Go ahead, call me names. Tell me I'm not invited to your table. It's just, as though I would be. I just have a better way of getting up and leaving your table if I find it doesn't interest me.
I mean that is the problem I think that the extremists are running into as they try to invade the tabletop space is, and I think it's what 5e players are going to learn real quick as they get ostracized for not jumping on D6, right? Is who said we needed your validation, and who said you needed their validation ever? WotC, that's right, I named them, doesn't love you.
No.
They never have. They love your wallet, but they don't care about you. They don't care about your stories. They don't care about your games. They will tell you anything they can to get what you've got.
Which is money.
So why do you love them?
Yeah, and here's the thing that I want to just point out, and I think this wraps it up quite nicely. We've talked about Conan and his interaction with civilization, which was only as he saw fit, only as necessary, because there were things about civilization he liked, but that was all he was interested in. He wasn't interested in any other trappings of it. Just those little things, the meat, the wine, the beer, stuff like that, the simple things. That's all he wanted. And then after that, he disengaged. He went out and he fucked around and he did whatever else he did. That's why we relate so much to that character, because we've spent our lives out in the social wilds. We don't care for, personally, I don't care for football. I don't care for sports. I mean, people try to discuss it with me and I'm just sitting there like, no idea what you're saying right now, bud. I don't know how, it's not for me. I don't care for it. The one time I gave a shit about any sport was baseball, and that year without the World Series just soured me on the whole thing. So, when we get to that point, it's and you look at the looks on people's faces like that, and they're like, how could you not be into this? It's like, well, okay, let me present this. I think you should play. Oh no, I'm not interested in that. How could you not be interested in that? See, there's the answer to your question. We're all fucking different, man. And the sooner you accept that, the better. But here's the point I want to make. If we're going to talk about civilization and its parallel, I think the ultimate civilization parallel is, of course, D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond, that walled garden. Oh, the graphics are so beautiful. Look at all we've done with the Unreal Engine. Look at all this stuff. But you're going to probably need an Alienware laptop to play this thing, or something similar. You're gonna need something like that. Oh, we didn't think about that $700 PC that you bought. We didn't think about that. Oh, we'll get back to you on that. But even at its peak, even at its best, it's still a walled garden. So it's no longer your table. It won't be your rules. You won't be able to do any of that, despite whatever WotC says. They lie. I'm going to prove it right now. With Magic Online, they have done the same thing. Oh, you expressed an opinion we don't like on Twitter. Well, we're locking you out of your account. No, you can't get back in and sell your cards until you start getting lawyers on them. Now, let's just say you start out with about 40,000 players. Just off the top of my head. 40,000 players. And then through process of elimination, you start eliminating, oh, these are actual racist. These are people who are expressing very, very vile ideas, actually vile ideas, similar to what I think his name was Morty in that All in the Family clip we showed. Mm-hmm. they cast those out. Okay, now you're down to about maybe say what 20K. Okay, now we're good. Now anybody who steps out of line just a little bit starts getting picked off one by one until you're down to like maybe 5,000, because eventually this whole thing starts to eat itself. And you've got people who see other people getting kicked out for very stupid reasons, and they're like, man, fuck this. I'm going back to the books or the PDFs and my character sheet, and that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to play over Skype, man. Fuck this noise. I don't need this. They start fucking off. Now you're down to this little bitty core of people who have made the rules and have moved those goalposts. And now, how many of those subscriptions do you think is actually going to maintain that?
See, my final thought for this, because I want to be clear that when we talk about barbarism, when we talk about Conan, we're not talking about the idea that everyone should start wearing no shirts, grow their hair long, and go out and beat people with sticks. Although, I mean, if you want to, that's awesome. More power to you. But I have always said that I aspire to Byron. Lord Byron was a poet, which meant that his job was to make beautiful words to woo women, and he was known to be a womanizer, right? But the thing is that there was one phrase that everyone said about Byron that became popular metric. Byron was described as being mad, bad, and dangerous to know. I want to be that. I want to be the person that's fun, but is probably not healthy for you to know.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like we can get as distaste, and that was like one point I made on another Substack article where I asked if the OSR was too harsh, and I don't think we are. I myself, I love the older rule sets, and thankfully AD&D second edition got me to going, oh, this is second edition. I wonder what the other editions are like. So there was that curiosity. Today's 5e player who just gets into 5e does not have that curiosity. And all they know is what they've been told by others. And that's where it starts. That's dogma. And if you question that dogma, the dogma says you do not step out of line. You do not question us. You do not do your own research. You do exactly as you're told, when you're told to do it, and how you're told to do it. Otherwise, you're out.
Well, it does what dogma does, right? First you join, and then they tell you, but don't look at those old ways. Do not adhere to the pagan gaming, for it is dangerous and frightening and evil. Right? So the 5e player, why don't they have the curiosity? Because they've been told that if you play the older D&D, you're a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a pedophile, and you're going to eat babies.
Yep. And meanwhile, all that's going on right there in the fight, and all that's going on in this little tiny subculture of the 5e culture.
Right.
They're making all the rules, guys, and that's going to translate to the walled garden of D&D beyond. It's going to happen, and then the exiles are going to become so numerous that those within that walled garden will not be enough to sustain it. It will eventually collapse. I'm just letting you know. It's going to take time. I mean, shit. Look at what happened with the OGL. All those people just canceling their subscriptions left and right, canceling those memberships. And some went back. Others were like, nope, I'm going to go play Pathfinder. They're just as bad as Wizards. They weren't at one point, but now they really are. And others like myself that were looking at, like, if I'm going to play Pathfinder, it's probably going to be first edition, which I'm going to say I like, but I don't love. But if I have to replace 5e with something, it's definitely going to be Castles and Crusades, because of the philosophy. Once these books are in your hands, it's out of ours. And I mean, that's something I agree with wholeheartedly.
If I had to play a D20 system, like, I'm not being a player and someone's running 5e, which I'll still play, but I'm being told you must run a D20, Joe. I'd be like, okay, we're either doing Wretched or we're doing OSC.
Yep.
Right? Maybe Wizards or Swords and Sorcery, maybe, right? But whatever we're doing, it's going to be OSR, because I have no interest. The OSR has curated and cleaned up a lot of old mechanics that were showing their age, and has brought back the ability for me to enjoy classic gaming as it was.
I would probably take a different route, just slightly. Like
War Against Darkness for one.
I could run you a Castles and Crusades game, but really, I think I would go basic fantasy because the barrier to entry is so low. No one has to be without. On top of that, that's one of those systems. I would just buy a bunch of core rule books and just hand them out and be like, here you go. Do you have a dice set? No, here you go. There's that. Here's a notepad. Here's a pilot friction pen because I love how erasable they are. This is how we're going to start. We're going to start at the base old school. It's still a D20 system.
Wait, it's 3 hours in. Let's end where we started.
Yeah.
You know, I just talked to Jason. They're finding me my stuff. They're sending me my stuff. It's gonna be great, right? Yeah. You know, one of the first things that's gonna happen once it's here is I'm gonna be like, Wolfgar, we got a night shift, and before you know it, we're gonna end up doing, you know, probably recording streams of you and me running night shifts, playing night shifts.
Night shift actual plays.
Yeah, and it's like, oh man, this is gonna get so dark and so creepy.
I still want to do the 4 Against the Great Old Ones because I absolutely I liked 4 Against Darkness. That was cool. I really loved it. And I did. It's for me, that was playing it mechanically was one thing. And then I just presented it in story form. So you could see I do as bad a rep as story gaming has gotten. I still love story gaming to an extent. I think there can be a nice compromise there. I think it still can be done. I don't see a problem with someone actually quoting lines from their character as they do something after the dice roll succeeds or fails. I don't see a problem with that. What I do have a problem with making it all about one or all about the other. There's just no in between. It's like, guys, guess what? I just like I told the story gamers, those like theater kids, I'm going to tell you the same. I'm not asking for your permission. You don't have to approve. And I'm not asking for your consent. You don't have to be at my table for that.
Well, the 2 games I had the most fun with, after this I'm going to shut up because we got to get rolling.
Yeah.
The 2 games I've had the most fun with recently, I played Crimson Heroes with T-shirt, right? And I played Carcosa with Grim Jim. And it was great.
Yeah. And you know what, Whelan? I would love to have you in on that game. I think we ought to do that in like a couple weeks. We'll take that couple weeks. We'll go ahead and get set up. I know Moots said she wanted to do it. That'll be on the 24th. I think I got a Horde Wars game that night. So I mean, this can be, this kind of game can go a little over. It'd be fine because we're planning it ahead. But I would absolutely love to have 4 people play a character each, and get with me on Gilded, Whelan. We'll talk about that a little more in depth. But I think what you're going to see D&D at some point. Wizards is going to have to make a decision. Do they finally drop this fucking act, or do they just go down with the ship? And I think it's possible they'll go down with the ship. I think that's possible. So keep your eyes glued to it. I wouldn't recommend buying anything else from them, but that's just me. That's just me.
Well, for 4 Against the Old Ones, I'm looking at Private Dick as opposed to a public one.
All right. So in any case, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Love you all. Take care of yourselves and each other. Always play what lights you up, and as always, play on. By the way, one more thing. Sorry about no video this week. I have had to work all week, so it was a 6-day stretch. Delirium set in, and I need to take care of these aching muscles right now. So I love you guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. Always play what lights you up, and as always, play on.